hour long, and we will begin with the Medford School Committee and the superintendent of the school system, followed by the mayor and the city council, and finishing up with members of our state legislative delegation. Now, some questions have been solicited from the general public here in the city, and time permitting, we will also be open to additional questions from you. Simply email those questions to the center or text them this is the easier way to do it, to 781-483-3042. Now, I will say at the outset that we don't have an awful lot of time. We do already have a robust slate of questions, so we may not be able to get to those questions, but if you're interested, go on ahead and submit them. We'll do the best we can. All right, let me begin by introducing the Medford School Committee and the head of the Medford Public Schools. With us this morning are Superintendent Dr. Maurice Edouard Vincent. Good morning. And committee members, Jenny Graham, Kathy Kretz, Melanie McLaughlin.
Hi, everyone.
Mia Mastone, Paul Rousseau, and Paulette Vanderkloot.
Good morning.
Welcome to you all, and thanks for being with us this morning. Okay, so I want to jump right into it because, again, time is pressing, and I want to make sure that we get to as much of this as we possibly can. Now, all of these questions may not be germane to your individual areas of responsibility or even your collective areas of responsibility, but you're welcome to take a crack at any question that I ask, and I'll go with the superintendent first, and then I'll go in alphabetical order. Okay. If you feel that a prior response already covers your answer or what you feel about a question, then you can freely contribute, or you can actually advance to the next participant. Starting off, the question I think that is on everyone's mind, Dr. Vincent, is around whether or not Medford schools will be open in the fall. So I guess the two-part question seems to be, when might we have a decision on the upcoming school year? And then what will your decision-making process and criteria for this decision look like? Okay.
We can't hear you.
You're not on mute, so maybe the volume control on your device.
Did you? We can't hear you, so you can either use the chat to communicate with Terry and let him know, or maybe if you dialed in using internet audio, maybe you want to dial in another way. So try to chat with Terry, maybe.
Okay.
Or even quit Zoom and come back in, maybe.
Okay. All right. So we will come back to the superintendent, but let me just open that question up for folks out there. You may have had impressions about, what needs to be done, what potentially can be done, what are the pitfalls, the pratfalls, so on and so forth. So I'll pose the question once again and just get everybody to maybe take a crack at it. So acknowledging obviously that there are a bunch of unknowns out there. The two-part question is, when do you think we might have a decision on the upcoming school year? Let's see. And what the decision-making process, I have to assume that it incorporates the school committee as well. What will the decision-making process and criteria for making this decision be? So hopefully we'll get Dr. Vincent back in with audio. Looks like she's trying to connect right now.
It says did not connect audio, actually, Maurice.
No, it hasn't connected you for some reason. Oh my gosh.
It was a little text that when it was said connecting audio, and then it said did not connect audio, so I'm not not sure what that's about.
Good morning, Mr. Carter. My name's Peter Cushing. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Schools.
Okay.
And
And
while Dr. Edward Vincent is connecting, which is amazing because we have probably had hundreds of Zooms, both publicly and within our own internal functioning, and there has never been an issue with audio.
Okay.
So I can only imagine the stress right now. So I would like to say that, you know, it's really a multifaceted approach to re-entering schools in the fall.
Okay.
As school leaders and as principals, teachers, the number one thing that we want is to be back with students and for students, and I think students to be back with us, not saying that parents and guardians and caregivers, I think, are also eager for that. The structure, the stability, there are great many things that we need to understand working with boards of health,
Yeah.
working with the state, Governor Baker, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, understanding where budgets are going to be from a statewide perspective as well. Making sure that we're able to have all the necessary and required things to start school. Just to think about one logistic in busing. You know, elementary schools, generally speaking, look to have 3 students to a seat based on just busing. That's obviously something that we're going to have to really examine and really going to have to think about. And so how do we operate our busing? Just as one small example, we've already had extensive discussions over the past 2 weeks with our leadership team and others to really try to start to understand what all the moving parts will be for us to reopen schools in the fall, if and when the state says we're ready.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good information for folks to have. So if I can ask you, in terms of, you know, making this decision, who else is involved besides yourself, obviously, and Dr. Edward Vincent? Who else does that incorporate in the decision-making process?
The CDC came out with guidelines recently. I don't know if our superintendent and assistant superintendent has seen them. I was just emailed them this morning, so I haven't got a chance to review them, but Mayor Walsh forwarded them to me so I can forward to the rest of the committee as well.
Okay. Mayor, we didn't know that you would be with us during the school committee portion of the meeting. Thank you and welcome. So I'm going to just whip around, and I want to get everybody else's impressions because I think it's important for you know, the context to be spread across this group. So Jenny, you're first alphabetically. So in terms of school opening, what discussions have you had with your colleagues? What is the consensus right now?
So I feel like it's sort of all anybody is discussing right now, and it's not just here, but it's pretty much everyone. We have an upcoming series starting on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
So every Wednesday for the next 3 Wednesdays from 4 to 5:30, we'll be having roundtables dedicated to what some of these potential scenarios look like to come back to school. And the point of the roundtables is not to hear about answers, because we just simply don't have to say we're better when we collaborate about what those concerns are. So it's an open invitation to the community, to parents, to teachers, to administrators to come and brainstorm with us. So those things will be happening over the next 3 or 4 weeks. I think the other thing that you're starting to hear in the media in particular is all across the country saying they will not be able to afford to reopen under many of these guidelines. So no loan pressures that cities and towns in particular are under, or even big municipalities. To go back to school in the fall, to me, means we need more, not less, at a time when we are going to be asked to do with less. So it's a big concern and there's no answers, but I'm really hopeful that our city leaders, and it's great that we have the mayor as the chair of the school committee, will really be thinking through that as they think about the budget for next year.
Okay. Very good, very good. Kathy, I'm going to give you a minute to comment as well.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. And yes, so it's on everybody's mind. It is everybody's talking about it all over the community, friends, family. Everybody has suggestions and ideas, which I look forward to the upcoming roundtable meetings. You know, some of the articles that I've read is, you know, the difficulty of the classroom setup, how we have to keep the social distancing in the classroom, which would then make the classroom a little bit smaller because it can only be so many seats, you know, to seat all the students. And then there's walking down the hallways and using the bathrooms and just how much time it will take for the students to, you know, properly wash their hands and letting only so many in at a time. There's a lot of factors to consider.
Yeah.
I know I'm fortunate to be working full time, and we just got a note from my employer, and they're having the same difficulty because our building space isn't big enough to social distance everybody 6 feet.
Sure.
The size of our building is not big enough. So currently we are still, you know, fortunately working remotely from home because they are constantly trying to plan and make decisions on whether or not we can go back into the office. And right now, the governor has said for us that there's only 25% capacity. So the essential people are going in, but and the rest of us are working from home, but it's on a rotating schedule. And I've heard that from community as well. Some
Okay.
people have suggested that. But so there's a lot of factors, and I think getting together for the roundtables will be a great time for everybody to talk about some ideas and share input.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, let me move the conversation down to Melanie so you can weigh in on this.
Sure. Thanks, Terry. I think that, again, we all know that this is what everyone is thinking of. And, you know, we have the SEA, which is the State Education Agency, DESE, the Department of Education, and the LEA, which is our own local district, local education agency. We have 351, I believe, districts across the state. And then we have all those superintendents that are working together and collaborating, and the mayors that are working together and collaborating. So we have a lot of community and state leadership that are working across the state to figure out how we're going to make this happen. We all know that we need to get our children back into school. We all know that we need to get our families and our communities back together. I think it's what we all want more than anything. I think when we talk about some of the restrictions, it gets people in a real state of anxiety in terms of both social distancing, but also budgetary, because we know that we're going to have budgetary issues across the country and, in fact, across the world. This is a global pandemic. We have the highest unemployment rate right now since 1929. We're in, you know, a lot of trouble. But I do know this: we are an amazing community, and we're going to figure it out, and we're going to figure it out together. And that's why we appreciate you being here today, Terry, and having us on as well. We're going to get through this. Thank you.
Perfect, perfect. I'm going to go back to Dr. Vincent because we had experienced some audio difficulties, but it looks like she's all set now. So I want to make sure that I give you an opportunity to weigh in. Your lieutenant, Peter Cushing, has already kind of laid out some of the groundwork, but what might you have to say about this, Dr. Vincent?
Yes, I want to say good morning. Thank you for the suggestions and feedback. I just fully rebooted the computer, and we're back on track. So that was a shock to me. So I apologize for that technical difficulty. Thank you, everyone, for the technical feedback that you sent me in the chat. I'm glad to join you. I'm really excited to be here. Just again, because I know I missed a few remarks that were made while I was rebooting. But during this time of school closure, our highest priority has been reaching out to and connecting with all of our students to the best of our ability, and really thinking also about their basic needs, which I think might come up, you know, food and social emotional needs of families and children and adults that are dealing with separation and the isolation of not really being able to operate the way we normally operate. And even today is a perfect example where we would have been in the community center, seeing one another face to face, and just being part of the community and having community members physically being present with us. So everyone we know is adjusting. But for what's at the top of the community's mind or parents' mind about when is school going to open. Again, we have to follow guidance from what comes down at the federal and state levels, which the governor will continue to give us guidance. We are working closely with our Board of Health and figuring out each community has unique, situations and circumstances that they have to take into place. It is my hope, I think it's the hope of everyone, that we will be able to be in school on September 1st. Our first scheduled day of school, that's what we want. So we're gonna plan that we will be in school. We are actively planning with administrators in terms of following the guidance we have thus far on 6 feet apart between desks. We had some classrooms where desks were clustered together, like 4 students or 5 students at the lower grade levels. They worked as a cooperative group, which is wonderful for learning. But in this time where they want us to have the distance and space, believe it or not, it's actually going to look like probably going back, reversing the clocks, potentially 50 years, when everyone was kind of in rows and facing in one direction, because you want to try to keep a specific amount of distance between individuals. I don't know if between now and August, they might reduce it from 6 feet to 4 feet, but we're thinking about all of that because in classrooms, teachers decorate them. They have little sofa areas and little rug areas and nooks. And if the guidance clearly says to us, you cannot use those spaces that way, then we would need to keep the students further apart from one another. And for our youngest learners, those that are in kindergarten, preschool, first grade, even second grade, it's going to be more difficult for them because at that age, they love to be on top of one another, to play and do that. So with the administrative team, the administrators, we've been meeting a couple of times a week for several hours, tackling all of school-related issues. And school opening is one of the issues that we are tackling. We're looking at guidance from other areas that have already opened. So, and some of them have opened successfully. Some of them have had to open and shut back down. So we're looking at all of that data. And so there's a tremendous amount of data gathering that does need to take place in order for us to really be able to give a definitive answer in terms of what that's going to look like. We're also going to be entering a series of roundtables coming up over the next 3 weeks, where during these roundtables, we will be breaking out into groups with the school committee members and putting some suggestions out to the community at large to give the community at large an opportunity to weigh in. It doesn't mean that everything that is suggested can actually be done because we may be given different official guidance from the state. But what we are going to do is, as administrators, we're going to continue to do our due diligence, speaking with other superintendents, listening to what's coming from the commissioner's office, and taking all of that information in collaboration with feedback that people who are able to join these roundtables, and I recommend that you do, 4 to 5:30 p.m. This coming Wednesday, the 27th, 3 Wednesdays in a row. It's an opportunity to give feedback and to try to say, these are some suggestions, and we can take all of that data, put the data together, and come up with the best picture for Medford, the best scenario for Medford. So, but we have to also listen to official guidance. We have to listen to the Board of Health. I can't come up and say, I don't care that they say 6 feet apart, and I'm going to put, all my kindergartners or first graders, 6 kids in a group or 5 in a grouping, and then put their health at risk. So we have to think about safety, health, the social emotional well-being of all the kids and the staff and the adults working with the kids. And I just want to assure the community, we are going to do our best. We are working very hard, trying to crack this nut and figure it out, but it's an ever-changing scenario and no one has the perfect answer. So that's what I want to say. And I know my other school committee members will have many other comments to add to that, but please know that we are working collaboratively, we are working diligently, and we want to be able to open strong, and we want to be able to open in a way that is safe for all of our children and for the community.
Well, I think one of the words that you used that I really think that the citizens of Medford want to hear is they want to hear collaboratively. They want to hear that all of the voices, of authority and good reputation and ability are getting together in these rooms, whether they be these roundtables or amongst the school committee or the your office with Peter, and really grappling with this thing as a group, really coming to consensus, and then bringing into the conversation the people around Medford and getting their opinions and ideas and making them be a part of the official record for what you do.
Yes.
So I'm going to move over to Mia so that she can weigh in on it as well.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? I've had trouble with my, oh, wow.
You're
Maybe
good.
because everyone's still sleeping, so I don't have to fight for the internet.
Yeah, we can hear you really well today, Mia.
I think I agree with all the other committee members' sentiments. I think the key part, because as Dr. Maurice and Dr. Peter said, that we're watching from the state and federal. So it's just a matter of communication as things come in from the state and federal to just make sure we communicate with our parents, maybe over the summer with a weekly email update of where the state stands or the country stands. But I think most of us hear from parents, and it's really that they just want to stay informed and hear what the latest information is.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And Paul, you have a moment or two to comment.
Sure. When I think about the fall in particular, I am, Facebook has been positive in some regards in this time because of the memes that have been, there's so many memes that are relevant to COVID and schools. Some of them are good, some of them are not so nice. But one that I keep coming back to is this, and I think it's actually an article about, have you actually met children? When we look at what's happened in nursing homes, it's because so many of the patients do not have the capacity to maintain the hygiene standards that would actually keep them safe, whether it's from dementia or whatever other issues that they have. And I can't help but imagine that it's the same problem with children. On day one, unless we have literal bubbles around our children, every one of them will be in a gigantic pile of hugs. And if that doesn't scare everybody here, you're not reading enough news. There is no way to send kids back to school and expect them to not be definitely violating social distancing, at least on day one, but probably on an everyday basis. I think it's really an expectation that as an adult, I struggle with all the time. I had to go to Costco to get a prescription, and I touched the keypad with my finger, and then I touched the other keypad with my finger. I went home, I forgot to wash my hands. I'm walking around the house, it's 2 hours later, and I'm like, I touched a keypad to enter my PIN at Costco, and so did like 1,000 other people that day. And I'm like, I feel like I'm pretty obsessive about this stuff. So I think that whether it's 6 feet, 4 feet, or 2 feet apart, the kids aren't going to follow those rules. So I think we need to listen to the scientists and the doctors and the guidance that says, if you somehow can figure out how to put them in a field with 20 feet apart so that they don't have a chance to run towards each other before an adult intervenes, anything short of that, I just don't see how this is possible. But, again, that's just my opinion. I think also, as Jenny mentioned, of the scenarios that we talk about, and there are many different scenarios, they all end up costing more money. And I think nobody thinks we're going to have more money. So I think we have to start with what are the safest options, and then from there, what can we afford? And that will get rid of lots of options, I think. And we may not need the same we may not make the same choice for all kids. Do kindergartners and seniors need the same thing? The answer is probably no. And so I'm hopeful we don't have any guidance coming from the state or the feds that is so broad that there's an expectation that we do one thing for everybody, because that I don't think is a good idea. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was that we really have to keep the focus on equity here. You know, there are kids still with internet access. I mean, Mia's internet access is a challenge, and it's not a financial thing. You can only have so many connections with the highest connection that FiOS offers and still be able to function. And there are 8 people in her home. So, you know, and then I think about like some of these apartment buildings where there are many, many people. And even if we had public Wi-Fi, an apartment building, all of them jumping on the public Wi-Fi. I mean, I don't know how that all works exactly, but I think we have to stay focused on that when we get back to regular school, whether it's in 2021, hopefully not that long, but that the kids that are going to have fallen behind the most are the kids that we have focused on the most now. Because the kids that are not going to fall behind much or at all, they're going to be fine. Like, let's not stay focused on them. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that thoughtful response. And it's a lot. It clearly is a lot. I want to make sure that I get over to Paulette so that she can weigh in as well. You mute.
Yeah, there we go. Thank
There
you,
you go.
Terry. So my colleagues have brought up lots of different stuff. Some of the things I've been thinking about is the superintendent talked about, you know, spacing in the classroom, but just think about all of those other things. The buses were mentioned, but when kids travel throughout a school, they're in lines. When kids everywhere, you know, gather, and kids are kids, they want to be together.
Absolutely.
Are kids going to wear masks? Are we expecting that kids would wear masks all day long? How is that going to work when it's lunchtime? For me, one of the things that I'm very much thinking about is we were thrown into this distance learning all of a sudden, but how can we make sure now that we have a fluidity of getting better at it, and so that as we think about next fall, we're not only thinking about next fall back in the classroom, which is obviously what we all want, but we're also thinking about the transfer to if students need to be home, if we need to do something different, that we are making sure that we're improving and doing the very best we can on the distance learning. That means in part, we gave out a lot of devices. I think we absolutely need to make sure that every student has their own device besides the connectivity issues that were already mentioned. For us, that means we need 2,500 more at a cost of $660,000, I believe was the right. That's huge. We need that now. The order needs to go in. I know the mayor is working on some stuff, but you know, the problem is we need to put the order in. And by the way, kudos to the mayor. You know, one of the things that Medford is different than many communities and very lucky about is that we have a mayor who sits as the head of the school committee. That means that the mayor is intimately aware of all of our discussions and all of our issues and cannot separate herself. Not that she necessarily would, but she can't separate. Like it's been such a benefit to have the mayor as part, and in fact, the head of the committee over the years. And I really appreciate that. One of the things to give hope, last night, one of our teachers invited us to attend a online science fair, and it was great. Wow. And the students presented their science fair projects. The teacher hosted it. Each student had a few minutes to present. They did their hypothesis. They listed their what they needed to do, the experiment. They were thought out. It was so much fun, and I was so glad that he had outreached to us so that we could see success during this very difficult time with online learning. So
It
that's it,
was,
Terry. I don't want to take up too much time.
Well,
and Paulette, it was such a nice reminder that kids are really resilient.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
And it's like, they were doing it, you know, like sharing their
it was
screen,
amazing.
and it was amazing.
Yes, so kudos to Mr. Platty and his class. But one of the other things I noticed was there were a lot of people online last night. It was a Friday night. There were at least 60 something. I saw the principal, the assistant principal. I saw a lot of the other teachers on, some school committee members. I mean, it was great. And it really was, as Jenny said, it's that our kids are resilient and they're creative. And my mom always used to say, this too shall pass.
Hallelujah. Well, let me move to this next question, because I think it may dovetail into what Paulette and Jenny were just talking about. And that question is, what advice can any of you give? And I'll go around the horn in terms of how families can keep their kids school ready during these difficult times. I've read a couple of articles where people were getting absolutely worn out from trying to homeschool. You know, and these are folks who, you know, that definitely wasn't their first calling in life. That's why they pushed the kids out the door, literally, to get them to school so that they could, you know, do the things that they feel they're good at. And now they're at home trying to homeschool their kids. But we have to keep our kids ready as best we can so that whenever school as quote unquote normal resumes, they're ready to go in and pick up where they left off. So let me start with the superintendent, and then I'll move to the mayor, and then I'll just wrap it around with the rest of you. So superintendent, what advice can you give parents who are trying to keep their kids engaged and in the game?
So I really definitely feel for parents, and we know that this was, as you said, uncharted territory that we found ourselves in. But I have to say kudos to parents. I mean, pat yourselves on the back, because this was something, if you didn't have any training, trying to set up a space and crayons and etc. But we worked with families and we worked with students. I even personally received emails from some students who said they're trying their best. It's very difficult. We talked about the social emotional piece, and we have a lot of Stacy Schulman, guidance counselors, adjustment counselors. We have a lot of people working in the background, providing that support. Mm-hmm. So I just want to say, if in fact some families feel that it's too overwhelming, to please reach out to us and we will work with them. Yes. The teachers, once we're notified, we put the important social emotional people in place. We work with the teachers as well. And we're willing to make accommodations there, because our intention is not to add additional stress and worry to families. But at the same time, we still want to continue moving the curriculum forward. So as we're going through this process, it's been a learning curve for us as well. Mm-hmm. And we're taking that information in, trying to figure out what aspects of the remote learning thus far were doable, what aspects could there be suggestions to see if there are areas for more tweaking. And we are willing and not afraid of having to make those adjustments in collaboration with the teachers union, where they are willing and wanting to collaborate with us as well. But again, this is uncharted territory. No one knew what was going to happen. So I'm just asking parents to please hang in there. We're almost to the finish line. And then once we finish this process, we're really going to be able to do a deep dive to reflect on the data we've received, look at where were our strengths, where were our areas of growth that we still need to target, and then incorporate those into the next iteration. We are going to still create another revised edition of a distance learning plan in the event that school cannot open, because we don't know. As we said, our anticipation, our hope, I would love to be in school right now. I am going stir crazy doing the meetings from home. I've been sneaking into the office a lot more because I just need to get back into the swing of things.
Mhm.
However, we want to be back in school. We want the kids in place, learning and having great instruction, and everyone feeling supported.
Okay.
And we're going to do whatever we can to improve and get it to a place where it's going to be manageable.
Okay.
But we don't know what September is going to look like. So in the event that we find ourselves in a similar position or a modified position or alternating schedule, we want parents to know that we are working with them,
Mhm.
and they need to reach out to us, and we will get additional supports if those supports are needed.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Dr. Vincent said a lot. Is there anything that you want to add?
No, I think what Dr. Vincent said is correct. I think this, we have to be there for our parents. And I think that's going to be a large part of the discussion in the roundtables. The roundtables, Member Graham's idea that over the next 3 Wednesdays that the whole committee voted for it's going to be huge. I think DESE and DPH, CDC, our Board of Health, we're going to have to obviously adhere to guidelines and take recommendations, but there's a lot to think about, and parent involvement is number one.
Mm-hmm.
I know just to announce as well, Dr. Cushing and I are working to get the announcement of the round tables translated, and I'm trying to get, through the city's help, translators upon request for those meetings.
Okay.
So just getting everybody involved. And if you don't have the time to come to a round table, we've provided email address so everybody's comments and questions can be heard. We want to know people's struggles. We want to know people's currently, and we want to know people's opinions of how they see September going. Or there's some families out there that they're not going to be able to send their kids to school. They're being raised by grandparents, and they're just not going to be able to. So we're going to have to not only come up with several plans, but several parts of each plan, and we will do it. We work hard together. We don't agree all the time. We have long debates, but we are getting it done, and we're going to work together as teachers, administration, school committee, and city. We will get there.
Okay. Well, I know one of the things that, it's important for folks, who are watching to know is that many of you are parents as well, and you've got kids and you've got to educate them too. So you're not thinking of it exclusively from the standpoint of being a public official. You're thinking of it from the standpoint of being a parent as well. And I think that that's important, because bringing that insight into the discussion along with your role as an administrator or a public official, it makes a lot of difference. It makes a lot of difference. Dr. Cushing, I'm sorry, did you have anything that you wanted to add there?
So the only thing I'll add is that, when we're thinking about our faculty and staff, and then the people who are the working parents of Medford, who are working from home. I have a 2- and a 4-year-old, and my wife is a clinical social worker for the Lynn Public Schools. And the reality is that many times we are simply handing the kids off and really trying to balance structures. And so really trying to have an understanding for our faculty and staff who are dealing with that, as well as parents who are trying to balance not only, working full time remotely, if they still have the obligation to do that, but also educating their children in this remote setting. I want people to understand that we have tremendous empathy for that, because we're also, many of us, experiencing it. So just so that's well known.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Well, let me swing around amongst the school committee members quickly. Maybe we get to another question beyond this, but Jenny, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, so, one of the things that my organization professionally does is we do a lot of learning design work in the adult community. So we do a lot of work from a corporate learning perspective, and they're dealing with some of the same challenges that we are. And I think one of the things we've been, when you talk about virtual training or virtual learning, I think the first rule is that it doesn't look the same as it does in a classroom. Mm-hmm. And the second rule is that learning the learning does not only happen when somebody's talking at you. In fact, that's the least likely time where the learning is happening. So learning happens when you do. And I think we used to think about adults and kids as very, very different in that regard. And the science has really come around on that. And the overwhelming answer is everybody learns by doing. So when you translate what has traditionally been done in a classroom to a virtual setting, you can't just do this thing on Zoom to work. So everything has to change about the way that you deliver content. So my advice to parents would be to just keep an open, because it's not going to look the same. So if we're doing it right, it's not going to look the same at all. That doesn't mean that the outcome doesn't land us in the same spot from an educational perspective, but it doesn't look the same. And, you know, really, really good adoption of virtual platforms opens up different opportunities than you even have in the classroom. It sort of necessitates things like project-based learning, which I think is something that is such an amazing learning tool for many, many kids. And we haven't ever had to sort of force that into the curriculum, so to speak. And now we really have to think about how we deliver this content. So it's hot, it's a challenge. And I think the hardest thing about it now, we're having to do that while there's 20 kids on a Zoom thinking about wanting to hear from their teacher. So all of this is hard because it's happening at exactly the same time, and there's no opportunity to design this experience. But if we're doing it right, it will look really, really different than what we think about when we think of K-12 education.
Okay, all right. Well, you know, I guess that you raised some great points, and necessity is definitely the mother, the father, and the great uncle of invention. So
yes,
we better be about our business in terms of designing and thinking about new ways to do these things. Kathy, give you a minute to weigh in.
Hi. Yes. So I agree with the administration and with my fellow colleague Jenny. Yes. So we need to think and listen to the parents, the teachers, students at the upcoming roundtable meetings. Hear their concerns, ideas, suggestions. Continue to follow the guidance from DESE, federal and state, Board of Health, and we are going to have summer meetings, school committee meetings to, so that we're informed and we all, can stay on top of it. And some things that were mentioned earlier were, staying in constant contact over the summer with our families, with email communication. I mean, it might not be every week, but maybe bi-weekly, that might work. But just to keep everybody informed about what's going on, even if it's just ideas, so that they know that we're still thinking, we're still on it, because there's so many factors to consider. And it's like I said, even about myself going back into the office at work, I don't know what the plan is. So we're waiting. And we're still waiting for more information. There's so many unknowns, and trying to get the best distance learning plan. If we have to be out of school in September, working with the administration, the teachers, and the parents to get the best plan so that we're ready to go forward in September. And the teachers are, getting their, professional development, over the summer via like maybe some free training. That would be, beneficial also. So all of that, I think, is something to think about. And just, of course, this summer, just taking some time to just enjoy summer and some downtime away.
Okay.
I think I muted myself. Because
Right,
I think that's important also, taking some downtime and just taking a week off from all, I'm going to try to do that myself, but yes, thank you.
Fantastic. I'm going to move over to Melanie, give her a minute or two.
Thank you, Terry. Well, as I think about the remote learning experience for families and the conversations that I've had with so many families, I'm really concerned about those families who aren't on these Zoom meetings, who aren't coming to our school committee conferences, who aren't necessarily checking in on the city council meetings, who don't have, frankly, the privilege that many of us in this meeting right here have. We have families who are experiencing food insecurity. We have families who have children with severe and significant disabilities. We have families who have language barriers. We have almost 50% high need students in Medford. How are those people coming to our roundtables? How are we getting that voice in our community to make sure that they are really being heard? We had a supply distribution, a second school supply distribution yesterday that was generously created by a community member, an initiative, a community member, Kathleen McGlynn Brady, who raised money solely on her own through the Cummings Foundation initially, and then was able to get partnership through PTOs and other agencies to buy in to do school distribution for supplies for our families who may not have access to something as simple as notebooks, pencils, markers, all of these materials that we frankly take for granted. We have far too much of in my home. I know that. And I think it's easy to forget when we have such access to internet, to access to supplies, access to food, that there are families that have very real experiences where they don't have those things. And to be thinking about, how am I teaching my child fractions when you don't have the basic Maslow's hierarchy of needs of how am I giving my child their meal today, is a very, very difficult thing to do. You're not going to do it, and nor should you. I think the main thing is, first, let's keep our children fed. Let's focus on our social emotional needs of our children. We'll get to the learning part. We expect and will help and support families around the learning part. But I think it's really important that we're talking about how are we getting those families to the table. I want to say yesterday, was today Saturday? Yeah, yesterday we did the distribution, second school supply distribution yesterday at the McGlynn School. We had 120, I think, bags just at the McGlynn School and several at the other grab and go sites. Do you know we were out of supplies and food in 15 minutes? We normally distribute that over the course of an hour. It was gone in 15 minutes. And we had to stand there and tell the lines of families, to come back next Tuesday. We'll have some more food for them then. And maybe in another week or two, we'll have some more school supplies. So the disparity in our city from, the high-end wealthy to the really struggling is stark. And I think we really need to be thinking about how are we getting those marginalized voices at the table so that we're supporting them, because we have the means to do that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. That is food for thought, for sure, and for action. So hopefully these are some of the mantles that are going to be taken up by the city. Okay, Mia, I want to move over to you and give you a minute to comment.
I think pretty much everyone covered everything that's on our concern. I know I struggle on a regular basis with my own 6 children, trying to get the work done, and I try to take it one day at a time, and I think that's all we can really ask of parents at this time. So I hope we're all in it together, right?
Wow. Okay. All right. So I have a moment for you, Paul, and for you, Paulette. So Paul.
Sure. So, the question I think was, do we have any advice for parents? So, I have kids at home, a 12 and a 13-year-old, and yes, that's a blast at any time. But a couple of points I think are really important for parents. One of the nice things of the school system is we drop them off or they get on a bus and we don't see them. We miss the days when we didn't see them for 6 hours. And then they come back and we can assume something happened. The parental, our assessment as parents of what it means to go to school is now all wrong and of no value or use to us as parents. Because our assessment of what happened at school was they were gone. And we had trust that the professionals were doing their jobs. And now that's of no, that idea of sort of like just passing the buck, and it's not a negative, it's just somebody else was doing it. So I think there's a lot of anxiety in my own home about what it means to be at school. I mean, I have one of my kids who thinks he has to sit in front of his Chromebook for 4 hours. And even if there's nothing on the Chromebook, nothing happening, he'll sit there because he still is in that mode that like going to school is a period of time at some place. So I think for parents, you need to, it's not exactly a pleasant experience. I think it's anxiety inducing, but to recognize and acknowledge that your understanding of what it means to go to school is of no value right now. It is for me, that's my advice. And I would also point out that a lot of the time the kids have been when they were at school was not time spent learning content. It was getting into your seats. It was taking attendance. It was passing between classes. It was getting lunch. It was lots of other activities that aren't. So if the kids were at school for 6 hours, they weren't like getting drilled by a teacher of content. Not that that's how teachers really do it, but you know, they weren't being like bombarded with learning for 6 hours. Even though as parents, you know, we drop them up at the door or they go on a bus, we get them at the end, and we can imagine that for 6 hours, that's what happened. So from an advice perspective, I don't know if anybody really wants my advice, but I would just say that like, if your kid isn't actually putting in 6 hours a day, I think you need to not be freaked out by that. And I know that the advice was that they should be doing half of the school day in time. And that's part of the advice from the Department of Ed. But I know that I've certainly received feedback from some parents who are like, they want their kid to start school when school started and end when ended. And even if teachers could teach in exactly that model, which as Jenny Graham mentioned, doesn't make sense anymore. Even if it was possible to just have the teacher sort of pretending to be at the front of the room, that wouldn't fill up the whole school day. Okay. So it's not an expectation that is based in reality, even if we were in the olden days. So I mean, none of these are pieces of advice that help with the anxiety around, am I doing enough at home? Is my kid actually getting any education? But I just think they're really important things to keep in mind, that if your kid is spending 6 hours staring at the screen, they didn't spend 6 hours getting an education when they went to the building. So, you know, why would we increase the expectations at a time when there's all these other things, the social emotional needs? And of course, I'm just talking about the kids that actually can physically do that, who have what they need at home. And there's lots of kids that don't have that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's tough sledding. There's no doubt about it. But you're all lending some insight into an area where parents need to need some help with their baseline thinking about what they're going to try and do with their children. Paulette?
Hi. So I'm a grandparent, and I'm seeing my oldest grandson, who's in kindergarten, do his remote learning, some of which is very successful, some of it which is not. I saw a message on Facebook one day from a parent, and she basically wrote, you know, help, it's all falling. We just lost it over something, whatever the topic was. And my thought was, if it's getting to the point where there's stress and anxiety over something, stop. It's okay. You don't have to do that today. Go make a cake and talk about fractions when you're doing the whatever, or go outside and find, maybe you see a robin's egg and you're talking about that. Stop. Don't, you know, it's okay. It's okay. Stop. If something's causing great stress, just stop doing it. Okay. So that's my thought on that. But the other thing I want to do, Terry, is I want to make sure we give out a shout out to the class of 2020, who certainly absolutely ended their school career in the most unusual way.
Yes.
And I just want to send them love and hugs and cheers.
Yes.
And Terry, if I might just add for one moment, I also want to say that for homeschooling parents and for the teachers out there, I think a really positive value of all of this experience is how much we appreciate teachers today. Having had to live this, we really appreciate you out there.
Yes.
Yeah, for anyone who has, who hasn't thought that teachers are worth 2 or 3 times what we're paying them today, we're finding out now just how valuable they are to our society. And if this doesn't jumpstart us into thinking about doing more for teachers, I don't know what could possibly do that for us. But I do have one other question that I'd like to get to. I know I won't have a chance to go all the way around the horn, but I'd like to at least get the mayor and the superintendent of schools to weigh in on this question, because I know that it's been one that's been pressing in the West Medford community for a number of years now. And I'm sure it's on the minds of other people in Medford as well, especially as Medford's demographic diversity increases. What initiatives have been or will be undertaken to increase the diversity of the teaching and administrative staff across the breadth of the school system? So Dr. Vincent, if I can get you to weigh in, and then I'll have the mayor comment as well.
Yeah, so one of the steps that we have taken, we have Stacy, Dr. Mulligan, Stacy Mulligan, who is an African-American assistant headmaster at the high school right now. She's wearing a dual role. She's actually helping to oversee our diversity and inclusion efforts, working in collaboration with our human resources department. And is meeting, we have Medford does have a very small representation of staff of color. And so they meet on a monthly basis and trying to, in recruitment efforts of trying to reach out to universities and making a conscious effort of trying to have candidates of color and increase our diversity as a district. So it is something, myself being a person of color and realizing that for the demographics of the school, of the students that are within the school system, that there isn't enough representation, and thinking about how to recruit and get that representation. So it is something that is not being ignored. It's something that we are aware of. And so we're going into our second year with Stacy in this current role of doing targeted professional development, but also being part of strategic recruiting initiatives.
Okay.
And so it's slow going, but we have started the momentum, I should say. We've started something.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Mayor?
Thank you, Terry. I think the same with the superintendent. I know the prior administration worked very hard with Neil Osborne taking the lead as the diversity director here in Medford, and there has been tremendous steps taken, and we want to continue with those steps. I've only been in office as mayor for a few months, and we have a hiring freeze except for essential employees. So it's something we will have taken into account, and we'll definitely take into account to make sure we have do the recruitment we need, as well as give interviews to everybody who is interested to try to bring more diversity to our workforce.
Yeah, and I know it's something that you're grappling with, not only within the school department, but within the fire department, the police department. So I know it's definitely this conversation. This point is germane across the board with regard to city services. So the discussion is really just beginning. Melanie, I have like literally 30 seconds. What do you have for me?
Just quickly, I wanted to say, and I would really encourage in city municipal government that we, see more representation in our school committee and our city council of the same, because their voice, is important here. The folks, brown and black folks and minority community is really important for our legislative body as well.
Okay. Well, one thing we were certain of is that the hour would go by very quickly. And obviously it has. And that's all the time we have for this segment. But of course, the discussion will be ongoing as you all further commit to the children of Medford and to the very difficult work that's in front of you. Dr. Edward Vincent, Jenny Graham, Kathy Kretz, Melanie McLaughlin, Mia Quinn Mastoni, Paul Rousseau, Paulette Vanderkloot, Dr. Cushing, thanks so much for being available to us, Mayor, obviously, this morning. And we wish you every conceivable success in safely and effectively steering the ship of local education through these very choppy waters. You may all sign out of the Zoomcast now, and feel free to join us as viewers for the rest of the program. Mayor, I know that you'll be back with the City Council.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry.
Thanks.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I'm staying, Terry.
Okay. All right, I see we have members of the City Council joining us. Okay, I'm just waiting for, let's see. I think Melanie needs to sign out, hasn't signed out as yet. Okay, well, I'm gonna go on ahead and get started, and I think we'll make adjustments as we need to. So we're moving into hour 2 of our time together. Allow me to introduce you to a group of folks that perhaps don't need much of an introduction. Welcome to, once again, the Mayor of Medford, Brianna Lungo-Koehn. Joining her, her honor, are Medford City Councilors, Zach Isaac Bears, Richard Rick Cariviello, John John's in his car. John Falco.
I apologize.
Oh, no worries. That's cool, I think.
The only
Mike
quiet
Marks.
place you could find.
In the best reception.
Michael Marks is with us.
I'm on my boat, Terry.
Oh, you're on your boat?
Yeah, I'm on my boat.
That's a big boat.
Yeah, I'm downstairs in the cabin.
I just got off the boat. I caught my fish.
Nicole Morell is with us. Okay, we may be missing one or two. Perhaps they'll join us. Perhaps they won't, but we'll go on ahead and get with the business that we came to. Thank you all for joining us this morning. So we are indeed living in some strange and some would say perilous times, and it certainly has not made any of your jobs easier. Here are some of the questions that have been advanced by your constituents. I will begin with the mayor and then come to the city council members in alphabetical order as appropriate. If you feel that a prior response answers or covers your own thoughts, you can feel free to briefly comment, or you can allow us to move on to the next participant. So first, acknowledging that when you folks took office this past year, you had no idea of what you might be in for. Could you speak, Mayor, to how you're trying to get through this crisis and how it's reshaped your view of how to govern in the city?
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Yes, when I took office, I was expecting to be extremely busy with many things that I wanted to get done, and had no idea that a pandemic was gonna approach within my first 10 to 12 weeks. It's not something I was prepared for, but taking it one day at a time, moving forward kind of was put to the side a bit, and making sure keeping people healthy became the #1 priority. Yeah. And I'm thankful that I had the team I had, especially Marianne O'Connor and the Board of Health. They have stepped up in so many ways. The council's been amazing, school committee's been amazing. The community has really come together. So what turned into keeping people healthy also led to neighbors helping neighbors. You know, we were able to implement different things that we didn't expect to do, such as the Are You OK program. We have almost 100 volunteers calling and checking in on everybody that is 60 and over. And I know counselors have gotten involved in that. We are able to deliver food and medication to those who need it. We also have seniors that just want a call back and a check-in. So we're able to do that. And I thank everybody who's been involved with that. We've had other members of the council and the public, as well as family members of counselors, volunteering at our grab and go sites. We have six sites where people that are in need of food can go and get food. We have, we've worked on mask distribution, which I never would expect. We had to order 10,000 masks, and thankfully Encore delivered plants, and we were able to put a smile on our seniors and those with disabilities and those that can't afford masks. We had that event. We are working on fun things for the community, all virtually. We are working now on reopening and getting our economy back up and running, which is extremely important, probably the second in line after keeping people safe. So there's just, governing took a turn, and we are dealing with it. We are doing the best we can. There's a lot of decisions that I and my team, and I'm sure the council too, we just can't make everybody happy, but we're trying our best, and safety and enforcement is top priority with getting the economy back up and running. So
fantastic. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. I'm going to go down to Zach, and Zach, it's not the game you thought that you were going to be playing, but it is the game that's in front of you. So how are you dealing with it?
Well, Terry, first, thank you for moderating this for 3 hours. Much appreciated on a Saturday morning. And thanks to the West Medford Community Center and Bill and everybody else for all that you've been doing to keep people connected. I know that's been a big thing for all of you. And I think I kind of see it twofold. One, I think the mayor really said, well, what we've learned we can do, what we've learned we have to do, how we can step up for each other, how we can help each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been huge. I mean, I think really that's been what we're focusing on as this has all unfolded. It's been a couple months now, it feels like it's been forever, and it hasn't been no time at all. I think a lot of people probably are having that weird warped sense of time. So I think we've really focused on what can we do, how can we help people, and I think the city has really stepped up on that. But in many ways, Terry, I think actually this is it's showing us all the problems we had before, right? It's really showing us how problems that we had before can be so easily made worse when something goes wrong, something unexpected, something none of us really think is going to happen. Earlier, we're talking about food insecurity and how Medford had a food insecurity problem. And now I think as the mayor and Councilor Carviello, Councilor Falco, everybody here knows the pantry lines are long, people are coming for grab and go, the food insecurity that we had. Now we see what happens if we don't have, employment, we don't have jobs. So I really think for me, a lot of the reasons that I ran for office, a lot of the reasons that I wanted to represent Medford and work for Medford are now just that much bigger and in some ways clearer. And hopefully that will help us kind of get to the heart of them, get to the heart of racial inequity that's affecting. I mean, we see that with the coronavirus directly, but also it's going to affect us as we have the biggest unemployment we've had in almost 100 years. So for me, I read history, I studied economics, and now we're in a historical economic crisis. So I'm glad that I can at least hopefully bring some knowledge to that.
Yeah, we are indeed living in interesting and engaging times. Absolutely. Thank you for those comments. My friend, Rick Caraviello, what's going on there? You're on mute.
All right. Good morning. Good morning, Terry. Again, thank you and the community center for hosting this annual event today. I wish we could be in person like we have done in the past, but unfortunately, and like you said, these are certainly unprecedented times. But I think you can attest to, when times get bad in Medford, the community pulls together.
Absolutely.
Always has. The generosity has been pouring out of people. So again, we're doing the best we can in these difficult times. And again, I want to thank all the members of the community who volunteered their time. Parents, just regular people, are all stepping up to making donations to things. The Chamber of Commerce had a great event, raised thousands of dollars to help keep the restaurants afloat.
Yeah.
Restaurants donating food to all the seniors and people who need it. So again, our history of our community is we step up when the times get tough to step up. If I can make one comment, school committee person McLaughlin made a point that about how they were running out of food like in 10 minutes. If she's watching, please refer them down to the food bank. They've had plenty of food there, and they give out quality food to people. So if anybody that's struggling for food, please come down to the food bank and get it. They're open 6 days a week. So Melanie, if you're watching, next week when you do your thing there, if you run out, please send them down there. And again, I'll thank you, and we'll move on to my other councilors.
Thank you so much.
And I'll just, if I may,
Please.
I'll let Melanie know. I know that usually they have enough food, but this week was the distribution of school supplies. So everybody was there for school supplies. So we're going to try to raise more money and purchase do another round of school supply distribution.
Fantastic. Very, very good. President Falco, I'm gonna bounce down to you.
Thank you, Terry, and good morning. I want to begin by thanking you, Bill, and everyone at the West Medford Community Center for hosting this event. This is always a great event. It's always a nice exchange, usually back and forth with our constituents. And I'd agree with Councilor Caraviello. It's always nice to do it in person, but we have to do it in Zoom, and that's fine too. But the nice thing is that this is still happening. So I thank you for putting in your time and effort, and everyone at West Medford Community Center for helping out with this. I think you hit it on the head right away when you said, we live in interesting and intriguing times, and we definitely do. Who would have ever thought back in January that we would be hit with a pandemic of this proportion? Mm-hmm. And it is really amazing, to see the Medford community come together and to really get behind each one of this, get behind everyone. I mean, you take a look around, people helping out, people volunteering their time. And this is what it's all about, giving back to the community if you can. I mean, I know that the people do have limitations and they can't. I completely understand that. But I mean, I know during my lunch hour, what I try to do is go down, and I've been helping out with the grab and go lunches down in Haynes Square every day. And, it really is. And Councilor Beers, you mentioned food insecurity, and you really begin to see it when you're there. Councilor Caraviello and I have talked about this as well when he's at the food pantry. The demand is real. People come down and they count on that lunch. They count on you being there. And I'm there with my wife and sometimes my kids as well. We have our masks on, our gloves, but we're helping out, we're giving back. But it does shed a lot of light on the needs that this community has, and food insecurity is definitely one of them. Mm-hmm. But I think it's great to see the volunteer efforts from everyone. My wife helps out with the distribution as well. She's been helping with the Board of Health as well. I've been going back and forth with Mayor Lungo-Koehn. We talk and, get updates and whatnot. And that's helped just to kind of make sure that, everybody's on the same page. It's good to see everybody coming together. Unfortunately, we're going through this. Hopefully, if everybody, keeps their masks on and continues with the social distancing, we'll have hopefully a good end result. And, we can hopefully at some point get back to normal or the new normal. But it's good to see the community come together.
Yeah, I mean, the word that we keep hearing, and I heard it a lot when we were talking with the school committee and the mayor earlier, is collaboration. Correct. And it definitely has become a key and a strength of, communities that have been able to figure out ways to, to unify and to do things collaboratively. And I think Medford, that's kind of been the spirit of the community for as long as I've known it. And it definitely is right now. You find a lot of agencies, a lot of organizations, a lot of businesses, who are very different in nature, coming together to try and achieve a result that benefits the city as a whole. So it's great to see. Councilor Marks.
Yes, thank you, Terry. It's
You're welcome.
Pleasure to be here. This is an event I actually look forward to every year. I love the back and forth, and it's a great way of us getting out to our constituency and letting them know where we stand on issues and so forth and what's in our heads. The old saying, Terry, as you know, growing up in Medford, when you're dealt lemons, you make lemonade.
That's right.
And I think what this has done for us as a community, albeit it's been very trying for us, but it has brought some positive things to life. Mm-hmm. And one in particular, Terry, is that, in my opinion, our community for many years did very little regarding homeless and people that were on the verge of losing their apartment or losing their home and so forth. And just recently, we used some community preservation money to give to an organization called ABCD Boston. And they're an organization that helps assistance with housing needs and so forth. And they have a variety of other things they work on as well. And we were able to get this organization on board and provide funds through our Community Preservation Act in order to assist people that have need housing assistance right now.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, there are many people that are working day to day and paycheck to paycheck if you're able to get a paycheck. And having a roof over your head is probably the most important issue other than having food on your plate.
Absolutely.
So that was a very promising thing. I saw our city step forward. We united, we saw a need, and now that need's being addressed. Emergency preparedness. I said it at last week's council meeting, Terry. For years, we used to look at the emergency preparedness budget, which sometimes was $500, $2,000, $2,500 for a city this size. And I used to always say, well, thank goodness we don't really need it. And guess what, Terry?
We need it now.
Need it. And in this budget, I'm hoping that, even though it's going to be tight financial constraints, that we look at the emergency preparedness line item and say, you know what, in times of need, we have to make sure that we're ready. And, funding is a big part of that. Having, the administration and the city work together towards assisting those most vulnerable in our community. I think that's what emergency preparedness is all about. So I look forward to having those discussions. I want to thank the West Medford Community Center. I want to thank you, Terry, Bill, Henry Millerin, and everyone that's put this together. This is a tremendous forum, and I want to thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Councilor Marks, and thank you for mentioning Henry Millerin. Henry was going to join us this morning to give a welcome, but I'm sure there's always 100 different things that Henry is doing at any given time. So we didn't see him this morning, but we definitely want to give him a shout out for helping us in a number of ways to put this together, to get everybody impaneled, to get the word out. Henry is a doer. He's, he can be a talker too. Don't get me wrong, but but he's a doer, and the city of Medford is better off for having him. That's for sure. I want to go into Councilor Nicole Square, but I want to say first, you're a newbie. So you probably had some different expectations of what life was going to be like amongst your council co-conspirators. How have things been for you so far?
Good. Thank you, Terry, so much again for hosting this morning, for taking these hours out of your Saturday morning, and to the West Medford Community Center. This is an event I've attended in the audience as long as I've lived in Medford. So happy to continue to be a part of it in a different way this time. There is a little bit of the opportunity in that I didn't have preconceived expectations about maybe what this whole experience this first year would look like. So there's nothing to run up against as what it was before and what it is now. So it's really just jumping in with 2 feet and hitting the ground running and dealing with these circumstances as they are to best serve the people of Medford. And I think I definitely have to echo Councilor Bears in the sense that as much as we are in truly unprecedented times, the issues that we're seeing because of this are issues that have already existed and have long existed, and it really just lays them bare in a different way. So food insecurity, the tenuous nature of housing in this area, and I think it forces us to reckon with that, but it also gives us the opportunity that, as Councilor Marks mentioned, we've moved as fast as we can on things in the ways and the tools that we have available to address stuff. So like using the CPA for the ABCD housing opportunities. So it's truly a challenge, but these aren't issues that are suddenly a surprise to us. This is stuff that we can no longer, take the time on. We need to move fast and we need to address them. We need to address them now. We need to address them as things start to look slightly more normal, because they weren't working before all of this happened. I do think there's also at least a bit of an opportunity in this. One, in the sense of moving online with our meetings, you definitely see a lot more people who have signed on into those meetings than you would see bodies in the actual city council chambers. So I think there is an opportunity for people to engage and to watch the council in a way that they haven't had before, and to really speak out, which I think is important. And I think there's also an opportunity in looking at the way our city functions, in the way of people are out walking more, they're out biking more, and now we're going to see how do we support businesses so that they can have outdoor dining. So how do we we're really being forced to look at our city in a very people-centric way that I think we all had in the back of our minds, but this is bringing so much stuff to the forefront. So it's incredibly challenging times, but it's raising these issues that we need to focus on. And it's not giving us the opportunity to move slowly anymore. We need to move fast. And I think that's an important thing. And it's a good thing. I mean, it's incredibly hard times, but it's a good thing that we're being forced to rethink how we live and how we want our city to look.
Right. Well, everybody's feet is being held to the same fire. So if nothing else, you can look to your left and look to your right when you're sitting in the council and know that everybody's going through it the same way that you are.
Definitely.
Very good. Okay.
If I may.
Yes,
Mr. Carr, I know a number of counselors pointed out that they did vote for $125,000 to go to ABCD, which is an organization helping with those who can't afford rent. But the council also voted to provide money to housing families, and they provide legal services to those who are struggling with landlord-tenant issues, and they're a great organization we've partnered with for several years. So between those two organizations, we are able to give our residents struggling with rent, thanks to CPC, thanks to the council. So it's going a long way.
And all that information's on the city website too, that people can access.
Fantastic. I know that Housing Families in particular is another one of the CDBG grantees, and so I've sat in sessions with their leadership, and they're a great organization, really well directed. And I know ABCD going way back when I used to live in Boston. One of their field directors was a good friend of mine. He's gone on to start his own organization, but they come to the community center. They do tax prep. They provided some housing advisory services as well. So they've established a place for themselves out of their Malden office, covering the entire Middlesex Valley now. And they really, really are becoming integral to some of the supports that cities in the Middlesex Valley need that they've never really had before from an outside agency. So did want to say that they're doing good work. So acknowledging that the city is working with Medford businesses, as some of you folks have done already, on navigating through the requirements for safely reopening. You guys had a very well attended and informative session this past week. Could you just remind folks on how they can get more information on what process they will need to follow for reopening? Maybe Mayor, you can weigh in on that.
Yes, thank you, Terry. If you go to mass.gov, there's a reopening guide.
Wow, okay.
And I refer people to page 15 and 16, which is a nice, easier to read outline than some of the material. But for Medford, we are being a little bit stricter with regards to reopening. We are requiring that each business that does reopen, they have a requirement to put a checklist on inside their establishment and attest to the fact that they're going to adhere to these guidelines. Okay. We are just taking it one step further. It's a one-page checklist, and we are asking that they email that checklist attested to our Board of Health or the City of Medford COVID email site, just so we have it and we're able to, obviously with the contact tracing, this is a way that our Board of Health can easily access the checklist if we get complaints, and then go in and check out what's going wrong, talk to the business owner. As far as reopening, have construction reopened, as well as manufacturing, and houses of worship are able to reopen as of last Monday. Coming up on this coming Monday, the 25th, we now will see hair salons, barbershops, pet groomers, and car washes will be allowed to reopen as long as they have that checklist posted inside their building and that they're adhering to the safety guidelines.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna whip around real quick and just get a sense of what the councils are hearing in terms of their constituencies in the business community. So Rick, what are you hearing?
Well, you know, I've heard from a lot of the restaurants, you know, some are doing better than others. they've asked about the outdoor dining options. I mean, I think in certain areas of the city, we do have the ability to explore some dining options. Not all the, I don't know if all the restaurants will be able to do that, but the ones that hopefully we can do it, can do it. Maybe we can partner with some of the private, like I say, Medford Square. The members community has that parking lot there. Maybe they let us use that for some of the. There's like that 3 or 4 restaurants in a little glut there. Maybe people can sit there and eat. On the other side, Riverside Ave, we've got that little walk, that little road by Citizens Bank. Maybe we can close that at night and let those people over there. West Medford has the parking lot back there. That's an option for the West Medford group. So like I said, there are options out there. Again, I'm not sure about the Board of Health and on how they feel about that, but I think it's summertime, people are outside anyway. So and hopefully by the end of the summer, we'll have more answers onto where this pandemic is going, and hopefully we're on the right track where the numbers are going down all the time.
Okay, Zach, I missed you. I'm sorry.
Totally fine, Terry. So first, I just want to say I'm really glad that we're taking a few extra precautions here in Medford. I think that's important, and I think we're doing it in a deliberate way, which is good. So that's good. I think Councilor Carviello spoke well about it. It really depends on where you go. Some businesses are doing okay. Some businesses have found a way to do something different that has helped them stay together through this. So that's been, it's not a great story, right? It's not like a fairy tale, but they've been able to do it. And some businesses are really struggling. One thing that I've heard, and I'll just keep it short, is I've been trying to order takeout a few times a week. I know that businesses really need that right now, especially not having restaurants not being able to have people inside. But one thing I've really been hearing is, and it's both from the restaurants and also it's a larger conversation around the region and really around the whole country, is that look out for this Grubhub and DoorDash and these different apps, because they're really taking a big chunk out of the money for the restaurants. So, if you can call the restaurant directly, some restaurants even have their own online system that they have on their website. That really saves these restaurants a ton of money. It's not a Medford story, but there was an anecdotal story that, they had $1,000 of sales through Grubhub and only were getting $600 back. So you can kind of see like chunks like that are massive. So that's just one thing to look out for. But I'll leave it at that.
That's good advice. That's good advice to be mindful of the fact that, those profits, can be subdivided pretty significantly. Very good. John Falco.
Thank you, Terry. A lot of the questions I've been getting as well is basically from restaurant owners. I think, they want to get back to work, but what are their options? Not get back to work. Of course, takeout has been an option, or carry out. And I've been doing the same thing, trying to, order out a few times a week just to, help out and keep business, keep hopefully giving them some income to keep their business alive. I think that, we have to think outside the box on a lot of this stuff. Outdoor dining seems to be the solution, and, summer is coming up, so that fits nicely. But I think, maybe, I know I received an email the other day, and I think the mayor maybe did as well, maybe making, I think it was Riverside Ave, kind of seeing if maybe you could kind of cut it down to one lane and kind of come up with some creative options there. That's thinking outside the box. I'm not sure if it can be done, but it's looking at options like that and seeing what we can do, and working with the Board of Health and seeing what's allowable, and of course making sure that number one priority is public safety and making sure that it's safe. I think that as we start to come out of this, the important thing is to definitely take extra precautions, and let's not rush, but let's make sure everything is well thought out before we make some decisions as to how to move forward.
Right. Very good. Councilor Marks.
Thanks, Terry. I think, I've fielded calls from business owners looking to get some type of relief, how to gain access to funds that may be available That seems to be a question that a lot of small businesses, whether or not they're eligible for funds and so forth, local, state, or federal funds, that seems to be a common theme that I'm receiving. And to be quite frank, constituent calls. You know, even with the epidemic, people are still out there saying, hey, I got a pothole in front of my home, or that sidewalk that I've been looking at it needs to be replaced, or the tree, it needs to be trimmed. So the basic city services are still out there. And I need to say that the city's been very attentive to addressing the needs during this particular time. And in my opinion, communication is key. And I have to say again that the city administration has communicated every inch of the way to residents, to business owners regarding what the city is doing on behalf of keeping us safe, regarding what we're doing in regards to outreach. And I have to thank Mayor Lungo-Koehn, who took office, and talk about walking into a hornet's nest, right? The first couple of months, and you're faced with COVID-19, as well as running a city. That aspect doesn't go away. The city still needs to operate. People think, well, City Hall's not open. Guess what? It's not open to foot traffic, but it most certainly is open and is working very diligent to make sure these city services keep up. So I just want to thank the city administration, thank the mayor, and you know, and hopefully when we get our neck above the sand a little bit, we can look back and reflect on how can we improve things. Right now, I think we're just trying to maintain, but how can we improve things moving forward? And this is a great learning experience, not just for the city of Medford, but for our entire country.
Absolutely.
So this is, you know, I know it's painful for a lot of people, but we're going to get through it. We're going to get through it stronger. And I think it's going to open up a lot of avenues, as Councilor Morell said, even with public participation. You know, I hear people saying, guess what? Buffets are going to go away. And you think to yourself, well, in the scheme of things, is that really the worst thing that could happen in society, that we lose buffets? You know, so I don't know, but you know, there's a lot of positive that's going to come out of this, and having a strong administration, I think, has really helped this community.
Very
I
good.
just want to say that Councilor Marks doesn't speak for all of us on buffet policy.
If I may,
Yes.
Terry, thank you, Council Marks. We're trying to communicate everything we can, but while people are watching, I wanted to just give a shout out to Office of Community Development, Acting Director Alicia Hunt and her team. They worked very quickly and were able to use some of the CDBG money to provide a program. We've had some community support with the program. I actually think Henry Maloran was part of that, coming up with a way to give grants to small businesses and micro enterprise, so mini businesses. It's a relief grant program. Applications are being accepted now until May 31st. And that is, I just have it up on a different screen. So these programs will assist Medford businesses with challenges around their ability to reopen or reopen as permitted, and with employee retention in the wake of the global health crisis. Program funds may be used to cover commercial rent or mortgage, employee wages, resources to establish a business's presence online, and other operating expenses. To apply for grants, please visit HTTPS. It's on the Medford website under Medford Micro Loan, and you can call our Office of Community Development at 781-393-2480 or email ocd@medford-ma.gov with any questions. So
Yeah,
I hope a lot of people take advantage of this.
It's fantastic because it's not the standard CDBG funding. That funding is intact. Those notifications have already gone out. So this is additional funding available over and above the CDBG grant money that's already been distributed for this fiscal year. So it's definitely a way for some additional folks who may not even be grantees under the existing CDBG to you know, kind of get in the game and take advantage of some of that funding.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and there will be a second round, but we're hoping we can get a number of grants out first round.
Fantastic, fantastic. Nicole, I'm sorry, I give you a chance to weigh in on the this whole notion of I've kind of lost my train of thought. You probably have a train of thought that's
Yeah, just talking about businesses and kind of
thank you.
people reaching out. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting a lot of the same emails my fellow counselors are, and the mayor is, and I think beyond, you know, businesses trying to figure out what to do, there's a real appetite from the community that they want to support these local businesses, and just understanding what plans and what ideas we have to support the kind of creativity that is needed to allow for social distancing and the best safe practices, while also allowing our businesses to, you know, serve the community once more. So I think there's just a desire, and I think it's coming from the administration. I think there's ideas from the council as well, as just, you know, how do we support these creative ideas that are going to come out, as far as pivoting businesses or expanding to outdoor dining and finding those spaces. And again, it comes back to the community thinking about what they want Medford to look like when we come out of this. And is it, you know, a much more walkable square where maybe a parking lot goes to dining, but you have that safety and you feel safe parking farther out, and you walk into Medford Square and it's a whole different experience. So I think it's, you know, through the additional funding we're getting through CDBG and just other ideas, it's supporting new ideas for getting our business community up and running again. And I think I've also heard from our friends that have food trucks, and just, you know, that's an ordinance we've been looking at the city council, but how do we support things that are in the works to make sure that this stuff comes to fruition, and we support our businesses that really need it.
Wow, it's a lot. It's a lot. Very good. So I want to ask about you know, kind of reflecting on what we're doing today. You know, the fact that we've gone virtual versus, you know, gathering together as we traditionally have done at the community center. Do you all, and I'll let this question go around the horn, do you all have a vision of how kind of town halls and community gatherings will fare under whatever the new normal is that we're coming up on, once we, you know, kind of see the crest of this wave and start getting back into the things that we've traditionally done together as a city? What's that going to look like? Mayor, what's Medford going to look like when we get past this thing?
I think when we get past it is the question. You know, we're on the downslope, and statistics are, and the data is looking better than it was, but how long it will take to get a vaccine, I think, is the question. Okay. So I do see, and the order is still in place for no more than 10 people in a gathering, unless you're in a large open outdoor space. I mean, and there you go into detail about you can't even be under a tent with more than 10 people. So I see a lot of a continuation of virtual meetings. I see a lot of, we had a business forum this week where 60 or 70 people attended through Zoom. It went really well. I see a lot of that happening through phase 1 and phase 2, and then potentially gatherings of more than 10 is our hope, and a possibility. I think that's going to be discussions that we have over the summer, and obviously taking guidance from the CDC and the governor. But I do see a lot of virtual, large-scale meetings taking place for quite some time.
Okay. Zach, what do we look like? New Medford, old Medford?
Well, Terry, I think one thing about this pandemic is that people have been sounding the alarm for a long time about something like this that could happen. Not, that we would all know, but doctors and epidemiologists and people saying to the federal government, who really should be doing this work, be prepared. And I think we're in it now. We see where we were prepared. We see where we weren't. And I think that's how we kind of have to treat this. I'm hopeful that we do this right. A vaccine comes quickly. We hit all the benchmarks, and we're on our way back. I think Councilor Marks made a good point. Buffets, handshakes, a lot of things might be out in the future, and that's what it has to be. That's okay. So I think changing our personal behavior is important too. But if we don't hit the benchmarks, or if we see what's happening around this country where there's 50 different policies and different things are happening in different states, we could be getting bad again. So, I think Councilor Morell raised a really good point that we have seen some more engagement. I think something we really do need to think about and focus on as a council, school committee, just as a community, is making sure everyone has access to these digital technologies so that they can be involved in town halls and community meetings and community forums. And I know that a lot of work has been going into that, helping people, training people. I think people are better at Zoom and dialing into meetings than ever before. But, as I said, I'm hopeful things go well. I want to get back in person. I miss seeing people and being in person and being able to have the interactions in person that you can't quite have like on a platform like this. But if things don't go well, and maybe we are in a phase 1, 2, 3 type protocol for a long time, that's when we need to make sure that everyone in our community can get on digital access, get on town halls, and be a part of this more limited what we have for engagement right now.
Good, opening up the platform. Excellent, excellent. Rick?
Your mic, Rick.
You're muted.
Mike.
Thank you, Terry. Me being probably the least technical guy of the group, this is a big step to be learning how to do Zoom and everything. But where the community is going forward, I mean, people like us and the people that are on this conversation will survive and will make do. I mean, listen, I'm not happy with doing this. The isolation is killing me. I'm me, Terry. I'm out everywhere. That's just me. But the biggest people that are getting hurt here are our seniors. Mm-hmm. They're really suffering with this more than you know. When you talk to them, a little 5-minute conversation turns into a 20-minute conversation because they want to talk. Like on a Monday and a Tuesday, I deliver like to 31 families, and they're waiting for me, and you get down there and they want to talk to you because they're not getting out. They're stuck in their apartment all day, and that's really the biggest group that's getting hurt. We have to figure a way to get them out of their homes, with other people, but again, they're also the largest at risk population for this. So they're in a two thing, but that's really where my heart goes out to is those people, because they want to talk to people. And they can't.
Well, I'm with you there. We have 2 calls a week, 2 Zoom calls a week. We do one specifically for the seniors, and then we do one for the general population. It ends up being a lot of the seniors coming back on the call, and that's Thursday from 12 to 1, and then Friday from 11 to 12. And so everything that you say, Rick, is absolutely true. We want to continue to keep our seniors engaged because conversation, really helps them to deal with this social isolation. And as we know, as we get older, one of the things that we worry about more and more is, does anybody out there care about us?
Right, exactly.
So,
and I say a lot of these men and women don't have husbands or wives, so that's really been the biggest issue. And one last point I want to make, and going forward with this is our nursing home situation. I know Mary Ann has done an outstanding job with this, but going forward, that later in the year, I like to put something out there to our council to change the way these nursing homes do business. Anyone that has a loved one in a nursing home knows that even on a good day, these places were marginal. So, and I say, my dad is in one, and these companies charge an exorbitant amount of money to keep these seniors, to take care of them. They're entrusted with them, and they get minimal care. And I say, going forward, I'm gonna reach out to Mary Ann to make us a leader into where our nursing homes standards are going to go. Because we had probably about 100 people have died from the nursing homes, which is really a shame. But again, they charge, large amounts of money for minimal service to these people. So going forward, I will be putting something forward in that, because they say, I want us to be a leader and where this goes in Medford.
I think you echo a lot of folks' sentiments. along those lines, because we're an aging population. A lot more people are going to find themselves in a situation where they have to be in nursing facilities and assisted living facilities. And, you know, the standard and quality of care is definitely an issue that's being brought to light by the situation.
Yeah, and they say their people are paying, you know, $12,000–13,000 a month for these facilities.
Absolutely, absolutely. John, coming down to you.
Thank you, Terry.
Welcome.
You know, and thank you for the Zoom calls that you have each week to the community, because that is a valuable resource for a lot of people that are isolated, and they don't get that opportunity to talk to people on a daily basis. So that's a valuable service that you provide. Thank you to you and the West Medford Community Center for doing that. With regard to our meetings in the community and whatnot, it's definitely different. I know myself, I love getting out and talking to people, meeting people, shaking hands, saying hello. You know, and I think, you know, I think all of us on this call are like that. And that really, that's hard when you can't do that. You can't get out to a public event. There are no public events, and it's really difficult. I mean, I know I love to see people and talk to people, and this is nice that we can do this in this venue, but it's just not the same. And that's really hard. You know, coming from a, you know, city councilor's perspective and running the, you know, as a president running the meeting each week, I mean, it's different when we're at City Hall and we're in person. There's that back and forth. You see the person, you know, it's just got a different look, a different feel. You know, the Zoom calls aren't bad. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you know, it's an option, but it is also, and a couple of my colleagues mentioned it, we need to make sure that everybody has this technology and knows how to use it. I'm not the most savvy when it comes to technology. I picked it up and I've had some help from my counselors as well, and I thank them for that. But you know, one of the, you know, it's an option. We use it, and it'll be great to get into City Hall chambers sooner than later, but we need to make sure we're doing the right thing from a public safety concern. And we need to make sure we're moving forward, you know, in a way that's safe for everyone. You know, I think one of the big things, you know, Councilor Caviello talked about, you know, our senior population. I think also you take a look at our younger children, students in the school system. I think that that social emotional impact is going to be huge. I really think that, you know, and I know our budget will be tight, but I think, you know, money for counseling services, you probably need to take a look at that line item, because I really think that you're going to find when kids do get back to school at some point, I think there's going to be issues there. And I think we're going to need to help these, our students, you know, with, you know, all the social and emotional type issues that need to be dealt with. And, you know, we need to really make sure we keep an eye on them, keep an eye on our seniors, keep an eye on everyone, really. I mean, you know, we are a community and we need to, you know, come together. And Terry, you said it earlier, new Medford, old Medford. You know, my theory, I always say it's one Medford, you know, and, but we need to keep an eye out for each other. We need to look out for each other, and we need to make sure we work together as we always do to move Medford forward. We might not always, you know, agree, but, you know, sometimes we agree to disagree and we move forward. But, you know, this is an issue that, you know, we need to, safety comes first, and we need to make sure that we, you know, take a look at all our, you know, different populations, seniors, you know, everyone, and make sure that we're doing the right thing for everybody. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. One of the things we're hearing is that the CDC has issued new guidelines for getting back to school, public schools, and we have that link available. So we'll make sure that as we're disseminating more information about what's going on in the city, that we get that link out to you as well. And it is available probably on the city's website at this point. Mayor, is that available on the city's website too, that link?
Yes.
Okay. So, and you know, just so everybody knows, the city's website is a wealth of information right now. I mean, there's just a lot that you can find out about everything that's going on with usual services and departments, as well as the contingencies that are being planned and made for dealing with the coronavirus. Okay, Councilor Marks.
Thanks, Terry. You know, one of the benefits, I think, going through this virtual meeting setup has been the fact that Now we have something to compare our in-person meetings to compared to a virtual meeting. And I think we have a unique opportunity now to combine and blend these two. And I've always talked about it for years, but it's fallen on deaf ears. But, you know, eventually I think when we do go back to the personal touch of having a public meeting where people can attend, why not have an option where someone could attend virtually? And we have the capabilities of doing it. We know this works. We know, as Council Morell mentioned, that it seems to gather more public participation for those that may be at home with their kids or so forth, or you have shut-ins that can't get out, or maybe don't drive or don't go out at night or so forth. The ability to blend both, to me, is a unique concept and something I'd like to work forward to as a council to see if we can have the best of both worlds. Because I think there's positives in both. The virtual is great, but the personal touch, as my colleagues mentioned, to me, you can't do better than the personal touch. You know, so I'd like to see something like that. You know, Terry, many people have asked me, Mike, how are you so adjusted when it comes to social distancing? And I've been telling them that my wife and I have been practicing social distancing for the last 2 years. And this comes second nature to me now.
Oh,
So, you know, this really works well for some of us.
You're here all week, I trust.
I'm on stage. There's one leaving in 10 minutes.
And thank you for bringing some levity to what has been, in so many ways, a very debilitating situation. I think it's important that humor continues to be a part of how we deal with this. So thanks as ever, Councilor Marks, for always having a humorous slant on how we deal with some of this stuff. Councilor Morell?
Thank you, Terry. Yeah, I mean, I think my fellow councilors have hit on so many of the points. I think, you know, the biggest issue here is it's a long road ahead. It's what we do right now. It's what we do as the weeks go on. It's what we do as stuff slowly starts to reopen, and maybe we're back at City Hall, but it's not open more than that. So I think it's, you know, it is a lot of continuing these meetings. And I think to Councilor Bear's point, it's understanding that not everyone has the same access. I think it's easy to think because we have access, everyone has the same access. I know Councilor Bears has raised the idea of municipal broadband before, and maybe, you know, that's way down the road, but it's understanding the levels of access that people have to the internet to join in these virtual forums. So I think as these continue, it's really having deep thoughts about that and making sure that people can join us online. But I think also President Falco mentioned just that personal touch, and as this goes on, how are we really checking in on people? How are we making sure people are okay? How are we supporting people right now? And as stuff starts to transition back open. So I think this whole process has been, you know, waking up every day and trying to respond to the new news and the new normal and figuring things out. And I think it just has to be a willingness to continue to pivot and continue to look at every way we can support every single member of our community and what's going on in our community. So it's something I would love to have, you know, perfect answers, and this is exactly what we're going to do. But I think it's having that ability to be flexible and also open, and just knowing that safety and the people in our community is our number one priority, and how do we support that in every single day, in every way.
Yeah, safety as the number one priority. That I think that resonates with a lot of people right now, and beyond everything else that we're looking at from an economic standpoint. People want to know that, you know, that the city is looking out for their best interests and for their safety. And I think Medford has taken a lot of leadership in doing that. Mayor, we don't have an awful lot of time left, but I definitely want to ask you about the fact that, I mean, you're leading, you know, dozens of city departments and individual managers and directors within those departments. Over a wide swath of what happens in the city of Medford. So I want to ask you, how do you kind of keep the conversation about what Medford needs to be outside of the coronavirus and what Medford needs to be doing outside of COVID-19? How do you keep, you know, everybody engaged in that conversation as well?
Over the first, from March to mid-March to mid-April, even the end of April, it was pretty nonstop with COVID. But once we were able to slice some hours here and there, we started talking about more city-related things. We also have a department head meeting every week where we go over what are you doing, what do you need help with, and make sure that things are on track. We're filling potholes, we're striping our streets, we're planting the flowers. Our engineer is working hard. I know our solicitor finally is working on other things other than COVID related material. I know the council, same thing. I think it was a lot of COVID related their first few meetings, and now they're starting to work on and have many subcommittee meetings and committee of the whole meetings to move Medford forward. There's a number of ordinances they're working on, and our office is here to help the council with their ideas as best we can. I know can't do everything all at once, and there may be some things that my Board of Health doesn't agree to that some people want, but we are really working to move Medford forward, I think collaboratively. And the same with the schools and the school committee. It's just one day at a time, one issue at a time, one phone call at a time, but we are moving forward and getting things done. And yes, it's a lot to manage, but I have a great team, and we're on top of them. We make sure every department head, it tries to give us an update every week, not only when are people working, but what have you worked on? And they've been complying, and multiple things per department each week that is getting done.
Excellent. Very good. So I have maybe 20 or 30 seconds for each of you to give a final word. And I know it's an awful lot, not a long time, but I'd rather do it than not do it. So Zach, 20 seconds. What do you got for me?
Thanks, Terry. Two things. We've done a lot of great work on housing, and I know we've thanked Alicia. I want to thank Alicia and Lorena, Roberta Cameron, and Andre LaRue. Big thing on the rental assistance. So Neil Osborne and Dave Rodriguez have been really helpful too. So that's just been a really great team. And just for everybody, stay focused, stay engaged. We're making really important decisions over the next few months that have really big implications. So stay engaged and stay safe. And we're all in this together.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you. Councilor Caraviello.
Thank you again. Thank you for the West Suffolk Community Center for hosting this event again. Councilor Marks made the biggest statement that aside from this COVID thing, city of Medford is still moving on. Life goes on for the city. The daily routine is still happening there. So thank all the frontline workers who are doing all their work in the city of Medford. But we've got some big decisions coming up in front of us. These are tough times, and we're elected officials, and we're going to be asked to make some tough and maybe some unpopular decisions. So I think we all need to be vigilant, and let's all work together to do the best we can for all the residents in the community.
Thank you, Rick. Councilor Falco.
Terry, thank you very much for hosting this morning. And first and foremost, I just want everybody to stay healthy and safe. That's the most important message. Thank you to all of our city workers that are out on the front lines every day, doing their jobs and working hard to make sure that the city moves forward. City Council has been working nonstop on all kinds of issues over the past few months with regard to zoning, the census, housing. We talked about marijuana ordinance. We got breweries coming up soon, ordinances, food trucks, you name it. We've been working nonstop, and we will get to the budget soon. The budget's going to be an interesting debate back and forth, but everybody's going to have to work really hard, and there'll be some tough decisions that will need to be made. But that's what we get elected to do. So thank you for hosting this morning. And like I began, we wish everyone that they're safe and healthy. And thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Councilor Marks.
Thank you, Terry. I want to thank all the first line responders, and also, in my opinion, the unsung heroes, which are the supermarket workers that have been there since day one, the people that work at CVS, the people that work at the local variety store where you can go in and get a loaf of bread and some milk. Those truly are the people, Terry, that have been out there and putting their life on the line to make sure that we as a society can go forward with the necessities. And I think they are the unsung heroes. And I want to personally thank all of them, not only in the city of Medford, but across our great country.
Thank you so much. Councilor Morrell.
Thank you, Terry. And again, thank you for hosting and the WMCC for putting this on. I just want to remind people that, we work for you, and so much of what the council has done is in response to you reaching out and letting us know where help is needed and where issues need to be addressed. We are all experiencing this in different ways or impacted different ways. So just keep reaching out, let us know how you need help and what you want to see move forward, because we have our own experiences, but we are representing and have to work to represent the whole community. So just keeping that conversation going and understanding where help is needed is really important.
Thank you so much. I want to,
If I may, I don't think, sorry, Terry, real quick. I just wanted to thank the West Medford Community Center as well, and yourself and Henry and Bill. Really appreciate you putting this on. I don't know if I've done that already, and I've been on for 2 hours, so I want to say that. And also, yes, thank you to our essential workers, and I want to wish everybody a happy Memorial Day weekend, and thank all of our veterans who have sacrificed for our freedom and those who have served for this country. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Veterans, thank you.
I would be remiss if I didn't let folks know that we couldn't get to all your questions. We apologize, but again, an hour goes by so very quickly, and I think all of the discussion has been meaningful and necessary in terms of what we have been able to get to. That's all we have time for in segment 2, but the discussion will be ongoing as you and we all work together for the people of Medford and for the greater benefit of the city as a whole. Mayor Brianna Lungo-Koehn, Zach Beers, Rick Caraviello, John Falco Jr., Michael Marks, and Nicole Morelli, and in absentia, Michael Marks and George Carpelli. Thank you very much for being available to us this morning, and we wish you every conceivable success as you safely and effectively guide Medford into the chaotic but certainly hopeful future. You may all sign out of the Zoomcast now, and feel free to join us as viewers for the rest of the program.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Have a good weekend.
Absolutely. Take care.
Bye, Terry. Thank you.
And as you safely and effectively guide Medford. All right. So, AMC Sean, he's in math. Math dimension. Okay, so rounding out the
That's
morning.
because he's afraid of a computer virus.
Okay.
And we do have other folks who are joining us. They just aren't logged in yet.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm gonna get started with the preliminary stuff, and then as the rest of the delegation comes on board, we'll do introductions. So rounding out our morning, we're now joined and will continue to be joined by several members of our state legislative delegation, which includes Medford, obviously, and a number of other surrounding cities and towns within their jurisdictions. So far, I certainly want to welcome Representative Sean Gabali and Representative Christine Barber. Okay, and I believe that we will be joined momentarily by Senator Pat Jalen and I believe Representative Senator Jalen has joined us. So. And I think we may be expecting
Terry?
Yes.
So Leader Donato had some phone difficulty yesterday, so
okay.
I'm actually doing this Zoom call from his home. So we're
really?
here together, socially distancing from one another. And when it's his time to speak, I'll give the phone to him.
Okay. Now, see, this is what I'm talking about. All this morning, people have been talking about collaborative and being and collaborating. So that is definitely a great example of collaboration.
Terry, I support the senior members of my delegation. They are the best.
Wow, it may be a little bit of a dig in that. I'm not 100% sure, but very good, very good. Well, let's get started. Once again, please welcome Senator Jalen, Rep. Gabali, Rep. Donato, and Rep. Christine Barber, who so ably serve the cities and towns in this Mystic Valley area as the state legislative delegation. So thank you for patiently waiting for your turn in the Zoom room. And we have some questions for you. So the first question is, we continue to hear about the devastating impact the current crisis has been and will be having on the upcoming state budget. So folks want to know, should they be worried about this? And will they be seeing reductions in state-funded community supports, particularly senior services, child and family services, and the like? So I guess I'll start. I'll just do things alphabetically as I have been. So I'll start with you, Representative Barber. What about that? What about the budget and particularly fragile services like children and family services, senior services?
Thanks, Terry. And thank you so much for having us this morning. I've been watching, and you guys, you get an award for talking to all of us, but you guys have covered a lot of really great issues. So thanks for having us and having this forum. Thank you to the West Medford Community Center. I think it's really important to be able to do this virtually. It is true that we have pretty incredible budget challenges right now at the state level. Many of the taxes that we rely on, the revenue we rely on for services, have not been coming in and are not forecasted to come in. The latest reports puts a budget hole of about $6 billion for the upcoming fiscal year, which is really significant to our state budget. That said, we are all working really hard to make sure that the basic services are there for people in our communities. We all know there's so much need right now. I think, all of my colleagues, we've been on the phone trying to help people get unemployment, help people get food, help people get basic services for the last couple months. There's so much need, and we have to make sure we're protecting seniors, we're protecting kids, and we have all those services there. So it's going to take a lot of work, and we have to keep advocating to the federal government too to help us. We have not gotten as much aid as we would like from the federal government at the state or city levels, and I know you heard that from the city. So there's more to do, but we'll keep advocating.
Okay, fantastic. So Sean, we can either start with you and go to Rep. Donato, or we can start with him and then go to you.
Yeah, I can take it, and then I'll hand it over to Leader Donato, and I'm sure he'll hand it over to Senator Jalen as well. Terry, thanks so much for moderating this. Thank you to Bill Hagar and the wonderful folks at the West Medford Community Center. It's such an honor. Whenever I talk to Pat Jalen, we're always so honored to be able to have the West Medford Community Center in our district. We are so happy to be able to work with our colleagues, Rep. Donato, Rep. Barber, in securing an earmark for the West Medford Community Center. And it's the wonderful things that happen at the center just would not be possible without the leadership of the West Medford Community Center and the community itself, and bringing people together. And I want to echo the sentiments of my good friend Christine Barber. It has been really incredible to watch the other elected officials. We have a strong collaboration with the members of the Medford City Council and the members of the Medford School Committee, and we are heading into very difficult times. I was first elected to the Massachusetts House in 2008, and that was the last time we saw a countrywide economic collapse, and Massachusetts felt that really, really hard. And my first budget, we lost billions of dollars. And then when it went to the Senate, because we do the budget usually in April and they usually do the budget in May, we lost an additional $3 billion. So we have been through these economic collapses before. They are not fun. They are painful. Cities and towns across Massachusetts feel them. Services that are critical for our families, for our communities, feel them. And the way I go through, and Rep. Barber is right, the forecast right now says around $6 billion we're going to lose in a budget around 40+ billion. It's a significant, painful lack of revenue. The Senate president the other day forecasted close to 8 billion. So we're going to wait to see what the actual number is. But in how I work with my colleagues in the House and the Senate on the budget, my priority, and will always be my priority, is securing safety nets to make sure the most vulnerable in our cities and towns, all 351 of them across the Commonwealth, have the services that are necessary. And this means we take care of our folks, our seniors, our children with disabilities, mental health concerns, our homeless, the folks that are incarcerated. You know, we need to make sure that as the Commonwealth, our budget is a statement of values, and we need to value the most vulnerable. And I know you had members of the school committee, you had members of the Medford City Council. Obviously, their priority is Chapter 70 and unrestricted general government aid, making sure that the state doesn't cut local aid. I understand that, and I'm proud to be their partner. We also have Department of Children and Families. We have Department of Mental Health. We have Department of Elder Affairs. We have Department of Disability Services. And we need to make sure that the most vulnerable are protected. So as we go through the deliberations on what needs to get cut, I can share that my priority, and I know the delegation's priority, is making sure that we don't cut the safety nets, which are so critical for people across the Commonwealth. So Terry, thanks so much. And thanks so much for doing this.
Okay, you're breaking up just a little bit, but I want to, there's Paul Donato.
How you doing, Terry?
How are you, sir?
Good.
Good.
Have you made that poem about me yet?
I'm working on it.
Okay. Well, let me continue to echo the remarks by my two colleagues in the House and indicate that things are in dire. Let's be honest. Things are in dire strait.
Okay.
If the Senate president is even just right on the basis of somewhere between $6 and $8 billion, that reflects somewhere in the vicinity of 20% of last year's budget of $42 billion. So when you look at what we have to be faced with, there's no question that we are going to have a serious budget deficit if the federal government does not come forward and provide state aid so that we can provide city aid to the cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth. And that's what we're relying on. Those of us who are in the leadership and our leadership meetings, we continue to talk about the fact that we've got to make sure that we protect Chapter 70, which is the school budget. We made a commitment with the Student Opportunity Act. We want to fulfill as best we can that commitment. And then we want to make sure that we hold harmless all of the various departments that take care of, as Representative Godley said, are most vulnerable. Generally, unfortunately, what happens is those are the ones who take the hit.
Yeah.
It's those when we have no money, it is basically, it goes to the children and families, the elderly, the incarcerated. Those are the ones that take the hit, the mentally, and that's the way it has been in the past. The speaker is talking about trying to make sure that we can stay on course of providing the cities and towns, and for those that we believe are the most vulnerable in our community, and we want to make sure that we don't harm them anymore, that sometimes they get harmed.
Okay. All right, thank you for those thoughts. I want to go down to our Senator Jalen. Have you weigh in on this?
Well, I concur with my colleagues. This is going to be extraordinarily difficult unless the federal government comes up with a lot more assistance for us, and it's hard to imagine. I think in terms of local aid, people should be aware we are not back to where we were before 2009. Local aid is still down from that. And I think one of the things we've learned in terms of the safety net is that we haven't been doing a good enough job. We have been underfunding programs like daycare. As we begin to move into the into reopening. I think one of the biggest issues is going to be how are parents going to work if there's not adequate daycare, and how our daycare is going to open with fewer kids. And they were already on the margins, already very difficult to run a daycare program. So we're also, I think, at the same time becoming aware of how many of the human service workers have been so underpaid. We call them essential, and we pay them not enough to live on. I'm going to go back to the this is not on the topic. I want to talk about nursing homes.
Okay. Well, it's fine. I certainly think that it goes in line with the questions that have been asked. So if you wanted, if you want to talk about it a little bit, that's fine.
So when we talk about trying to deal with a gigantic deficit, nursing home workers have been paid so little that they work, many of them work more than one job. And that is one of the biggest causes of the spread in nursing homes. I'm not blaming the workers. The workers are trying to pay their rent and pay for their food. And if they're being paid $13 or $14 an hour, they have to find a way to do it. And they're working two jobs. They might not be working in two nursing homes, but they might be working in a grocery store. The most essential people who've been found to be essential are the least well paid in our Commonwealth. Yeah. So with a budget deficit, how are we going to make sure that people who we need are paid enough to provide the services that we need? It's about time for us to think about the level of funding of the services that we need.
Well, one of the questions that's been asked is knowing that the state legislature can only exert so much influence on what's happening at the federal level, what is the realistic hope on the horizon for a significant second round of federal assistance to the state?
Well, Terry, I think that one of the things, as you probably might be aware of, is that the Democratic controlled House of Representatives in Congress focused on the HEROES Act and brought the HEROES Act forward. And the Senate and the President have not embraced it as of yet. And I think that the only way that we're going to get the opportunity to have additional funds for the states so that we can provide funds for the cities and towns is for our delegation, both the U.S. Senate and the congressmen and women, put as much pressure on the federal government through the Senate and the President. And that's the key as to what we need to do, because if we cannot do that, as Pat says and my colleagues are saying, we are going to be faced with a serious problem of at least 12 to 15% reduction on what we did last year in our budget. And you know that the restaurants and the retail stores have been closed, and so that has exacerbated what our revenues are for my phone is ringing. I'm sorry. Okay. That has exacerbated what our revenues are anticipated. Okay. So let me hand it to Sean.
Okay. I hear you, but you're breaking up somewhat. So I'm hopeful that.
Yeah, North Medford, I think, has some spot reception right now, unfortunately.
Okay, we hear you a little bit now, so keep talking.
I agree with everything that Paul said in terms of the hopes. I would say, actually, we that we lobby
I am so sorry. We're just having a really hard time with your signal right now. Okay, well, while we're waiting to see perhaps if Sean and Paul are able to get their signal a little bit more consistent.
Is that better, Terry?
Oh, yeah, it is better. Yes.
Okay. Do you want to take that, Pat? Were you filling in for me?
No, why don't you continue, and then I'll go to Christine and back to Pat.
Okay, I appreciate everyone holding tight during these technical difficulties. I appreciate it. So the other part that I was about to say was the importance for raising revenue progressively and equitably. And I would say, to me, it's really, really important that we continue having the debate. You know, in the 1990s, we did tax cut after tax cut for the wealthiest individuals in the Commonwealth. And I think we've had conversation in terms of how to raise revenue progressively, meaning that the top income earners, the wealthiest in the Commonwealth, pay their fair share. And we voted last session, recently, to put a ballot question on the ballot known as the Fair Share Amendment that would raise the income tax on those who make more than $1 million. That is, if you make more than $1 million, you're going to have a slight increase in your taxes so that this revenue can go to education and transportation. And so I think it's really important that the Commonwealth, the state lawmakers in the House and the Senate, look at more ways of raising revenue on the wealthiest individuals in the Commonwealth, especially during difficult times, so that we can continue providing the services that are so critical.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna bounce over to Christine. And Christine, once again, what hope do we have in terms of, you know, kind of budget assistance, and what are you and your counterparts at the state, at the federal level, what conversations are you guys having right now?
Thanks, Terry. I agree with what my colleagues have said. You know, the federal government, the House is trying to pass a really comprehensive bill and running into challenges, and we need the federal support. I also agree with Rep. Garbely's point that we really need to look at progressive revenue at the state level. There are some corporate loopholes of some big corporations that are still doing well now, and you know, have money in offshore accounts and things that we might be able to tighten those loopholes and find ways to raise the revenue to really meet the basic needs right now. And I think we have to be thoughtful about that, and it's not easy. But with the amount of need that has opened up with this crisis, and we all know this crisis is not hitting everyone the same. I've been really focused on immigrant communities, low-income communities, and folks who were really on the edge before, and this crisis has really turned into a disaster. So everyone's hurting right now. You know, we've all seen there's so much more need for food banks and other basic resources. So we can't ignore this, and we have to respond in the budget. And I think it's going to take some hard conversations about that, but we'll keep fighting to make sure we do.
Okay. Well, Pat, I think a picture is emerging about what you're trying to do at the state level and the conversations that you're having. But once again, what conversations are you having with your counterparts in the federal, in the House and in the Congress right now?
I'm mostly getting information from them, and I think the thing that I can't express enough how wonderful they're being, but they do face a Republican Senate and a Republican president who don't have the same vision of recovery and what we need to do to help states and cities. So that's a very hard conversation for them. So we need to support them and to support our senators as they try to help us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is indeed a dire state. The question was asked, and it's been asked both in terms of the school department. So when I had the school committee on earlier, the city council, when I had them and the mayor on, just before you, and now at the state level, how do you kind of keep current on the very important other business of the state, infrastructure, housing development, new business engagement, environmental safeguards, climate change, the arts, civil liberties, amid everything that the coronavirus is forcing you to focus on? I think, people are wondering, how does the ship of state continue to float?
Terry, it's a great question. It's an important question. The legislature, the House of Representatives, and Leader Donato has been leading the sessions, but we've been doing remote sessions where we've been voting electronically on a phone call that allows us to continue doing the business of the Commonwealth during a pandemic. Mm-hmm. And you are right. We have been just completely overwhelmed in many ways by the pandemic and what it's doing to nursing homes and group homes and Soldiers Home, understanding that it's Memorial Day weekend. We have been burdened with the loss of many, many of our community members because of this disease. But just like you, the delegation, we all have our priorities. Mm-hmm. I filed my 100% renewable energy bill. I filed the Cherish Act to invest in all 29 of our public higher education institutions across the Commonwealth. We want to get those bills passed. Mm-hmm. We want to start having those conversations. And so that's why we started doing remote sessions, because we want to start, even though we know that we need to do more. We need to do more around the coronavirus and helping those impacted by this horrible pandemic. But we also want to get going on some of the other crucial needs. Mm-hmm. I think it's important. If you look at our hospitals across the Commonwealth, heart attacks and strokes haven't stopped just because of the coronavirus. And it's really important to keep that in mind. So the other pieces of legislation that we have filed, we still want to take those up. Usually session ends July 31st. And even though there's been no announcement, and I'm sure my colleagues are advocating that we continue session into the fall to allow us, one, to pass more legislation related to this pandemic, mm-hmm. but also to pass these critical pieces of legislation that have priorities for all 4 of the members of the Medford delegation.
Mm-hmm. That's one, is commendable that you're having that conversation. I'm gonna come back to you in a minute, Rep. Donato, but I just wanted to say the concept of a vacation for everybody else in the country has changed or virtually disappeared because of the contingencies that are being made necessary by the coronavirus. So I think a lot of people were wondering, well, if we can't take vacations and we can't do the leisure things that we want to do, then why should our elected officials have those luxuries? So I think it's good for the people to hear that you're at least thinking about how to extend that legislative session to accommodate all of this additional stuff that has to happen and things that have to be talked about. I think that's good for the citizenry to be able to hear that. Representative Donato.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the fact that we are working toward finding solutions to our budgetary concerns. And more important is, yes, we have been overwhelmed by this pandemic, and that has taken up most of the time and the effort, not only of the Baker administration, but of the legislature as well. Mm-hmm. But we are cognizant that we have a duty to continue to work on behalf of the people of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And we can't do that unless we have a budget. And we know that we can't have a budget based upon what's happening right now. We know that we're going to have to work diligently. And if it means that, and the speaker has said this already, if it means that we forego the time that we generally have from July 1st to January, then so be it. It's more important we stay in the State House, work half of the problems that we have, try to focus on what the budgetary concerns are going to be and how do we fix this situation facing what the pandemic has done to the economy in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Representative Barber.
I agree with my colleagues. We've been working collaboratively on this, but I agree there's so much need we talked about with the pandemic, but there's also issues that existed before that haven't gone away. I've been working with a big coalition on a group to make prescription drugs more affordable. Just because there's a pandemic doesn't mean people still have problems affording their inhalers and getting their insulin for a reasonable price. So it's still a critical issue we have to address. We've been working a lot on the housing crisis and how to bring more affordable housing in the region, which has been a crisis long before the pandemic. And while we've taken a bunch of steps for emergency to prevent evictions during the pandemic, there's so much more to do on housing. So we know we have a long list ahead of us, things that we're now that some of the most really emergency needs are under control. We are, as has been said, we're voting, we're trying to move some of those other issues, and I hope we keep doing that this summer and fall.
Excellent. Excellent. So Senator Jalen, I know you've been in this game for a minute, and you've seen some things. What is so different about this in terms of the way that is impacting the work that you try to get done on an everyday basis?
Well, let me say, earlier you asked how we know what's happening, and I just want to say that that's a big piece of what's happening for me and my work, is that we are getting so many communications from people. People have figured out that we can sometimes help them. Most of our calls and asks for assistance have been about unemployment.
Okay.
Partly because I'm chair of labor and workforce development, but also because people are having real problems, even though the Department of Unemployment Assistance has staffed up. They have more than 10 times as many people. They hired more than 500 new people in the last month. But it means that there are two problems. One is that the system is kicking out people that shouldn't be kicked out.
Okay.
And so then they can't get assistance. And the second problem is that sometimes the new people may not have the right information or may not get back to people. So a lot of what I learn is from people calling and asking for assistance. But also people may have more time to express their opinions about all kinds of issues.
Yeah.
And so we get hundreds and hundreds of emails every day. I really do. Please don't write to us, because I don't know where my mail goes when it gets to the State House. We're not there.
Okay.
But, and so people call us and we do pick up our messages, but it's much easier when they write by email. But my staff is working really hard, both to help people with their problems, but try to change the UI system so that people get their assistance. And as Elder Affairs, I've spent so much time on the issues of nursing homes and assisted livings. And I'm very frustrated with the administration because they don't want to release information to the public, which people want and need to have. So Medford has been particularly hard hit in the nursing homes.
Absolutely.
And it's been just heartbreaking to talk to family members and to workers and administrators in the nursing facilities. So one thing that I want to say is that the pandemic has given us some direction. I think that we need better funding for our nursing homes, but we also need better accountability. And both of those are happening right now, much too late, probably a month too late to save lives, but we can learn from that. And we can learn from that from the pandemic about the importance of schools to our economy, not just getting kids ready to be productive citizens, but also that parents can't work if they don't have childcare and schools. Schools are serving that function too.
Absolutely.
So we're seeing so many things that we really need, and we haven't been willing to adequately support.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to go back to Sean's point about,
yes,
about adequate revenue, and and Christine's backing it up, that we need it to be fair. There are people who are still doing well. It's hard to believe. I don't know them, but
yeah,
there are people who are still finding ways to be profitable in this situation.
I mean, these are times when, you know, certain entities, you know, thrive on chaotic situations, and they manage to, you know, to make lots and lots of lemonade out of the lemons that, you know, the rest of us are seeing. I want to pivot, if I may, to higher education, in a question about what, you know, what kind of guidance, what kind of direction, what are the prospects for the colleges and universities and in community colleges, given, you know, all of the things that are being prohibited by coronavirus right now? You know,
So
John, yes.
I'll take that. You know, I serve on the Joint Committee on Higher Education, and this is something that we are monitoring literally on a daily basis. I've had conversations with Marty Meehan, our president of UMass, and, you know, some schools have already canceled fall sessions and have gone completely to remote sessions. So we anticipate that a lot of our students won't be returning to the classroom in the fall in terms of higher education, even though public higher education is yet to make a decision on that, as well as other private institutions. A part of the CARES Act was a significant amount of money did go to our institutions of higher learning, both private and public. But a lot of that money is paying on the lack of revenue coming in for room and board, and some of the other, just trying to keep the lights on a lot of these campuses. We, as a legislature, as I've said many times before I filed the Cherish Act, we need to, I'll be honest with you, we invest more in the Department of Corrections than we do in public higher education. We have 29 campuses across the Commonwealth. 85% of our young people that graduate from one of these 29 institutions, whether it be one of our UMass campuses or a state university or a community college, once they graduate, they don't head overseas and make millions of dollars. Many of them don't leave the state. Those 80 to 85% of those young people, once they graduate, they stay in the Commonwealth and they invest in our cities and towns. And we should invest in them, which is why the Cherish Act, I believe, is so important. During difficult economic times, you invest in areas where you're going to be strongest when you come out of a recession. Okay. Education is certainly one of those areas, but public higher education has been kind of the stepchild, if you will, of that investment. Okay. There are conversations ongoing looking at the phased-in opening that the governor has laid out. And many of the institutions of higher education are looking at models, the rest of the nation, how their counterparts are doing this. And I expect a decision will be made very soon on the campuses who have yet to make the decision in terms of if next semester will be remote or if campuses will be reopening. I would be very skeptical about reopening campuses at the moment because of this pandemic.
Okay, okay.
And I want to say something about an idea that I've heard is the personal reopening, that people are going to make decisions based on whether they feel safe and whether they think that the experience will be worthwhile. The public higher education system is dependent on foreign students, who many of them who won't be there. And I have 2 seniors in my high school seniors, graduating seniors in our household. Going to school, if it's remote, is not a college education. Just as going to high school remote is nothing like being in contact with other kids and with your teachers. So many people will choose not to go to school, higher education, if it's remote. They'll wait until they feel safe. So it's a very complex decision making that involves not only the colleges and universities, but also the students.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. I may come back to you on this, Senator Jalen, but I want to get Representative Donato's opinion on higher education and how we move forward there.
Well, I have a vested interest. I have a college student at New England School of Law, and I have a grandson at New England School of Law and a grandson at Emerson, and they both have been doing their studies relative to remote. So I know on a personal level, the Senator is correct. Doing your studies remote are not going to give you the same educational opportunities as being there in the classroom. And I defer to Representative Gobley because he was the vice chair of the Committee on Higher Education, and he did work diligently to try to see if we could continue to add more dollars into the higher education system throughout the Commonwealth. We're going to have to, as I said, Terry, we're going to have to look at what the budget is going to look like based upon what revenues that we have. And this is the reason why we haven't done the budget yet. And in all probability, it will be closer to the end of June when we even take an opportunity to look at it, because we're waiting to see 2 things that are important. The revenues that come in, and you know that the restaurants have not been here, so we're not getting that tax. The revenues that come in, the income tax that we deferred until July 15th, and what the federal government's going to do to assist us.
Yeah,
that's going to be the key. Those are the 2 keys that we have to look at, and that's the reason why, if we do a budget, I can assure you, we're going to do a 1/12 budget within the next few weeks to take care of us from July to whatever. But we're gonna start on that basis, but we're going to continue to work to make sure that we have a better focus on what our revenues are going to be and whether or not the federal government is going to step up to the plate.
Okay, very good. Representative Barber?
I don't have much more to add, Terry. My colleagues have really covered it. I would say public higher ed, we're all worried about that system. It's been said it's been starved for a long time, and we've had conversations where we know there's a lot of need there for students and for the institutions. And I know, Tufts here in our community, Tufts University, they're just having conversations about what they're going to do, if they're going to bring students back and what that will look like. So there's just still a lot of unknowns. And a lot of fear in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Senator Jalen, I want to come back to you because I want to ask you, have you heard anything in the way of assistance with student loans, both for the students and for the parents that have underwritten a lot of these loan costs for students? That they already have responsibility and accountability for paying, but loans that will be upcoming for tuition ongoing.
I'm going to send that to Sean because I feel like he probably knows more than I do about deferral and about interest freezing.
Okay, Sean, what about that?
Well, we should forgive loans. That's what we absolutely should be doing. So the federal government is looking at this, or I should rather say there are congressional representatives who are looking at this. There are also senators who are looking at this, but it has not risen to the level that it absolutely should. There are pieces of legislation in Massachusetts to work to forgive loans, but also to have debt-free higher education, which I strongly support. And we're trying to go in those initiatives. And I didn't say this before, Terry, but the Cherish Act, which would invest in public higher education, one of the people who did help write that bill, apart from myself, was Zach Bears, who's on the Medford City Council. He's also the executive director of our Phenom, or is very active in that role. So we collaborate very closely with our Medford elected officials, with state and local.
Okay.
And I would like to say that one good thing that the federal government did is that for federal loans, for federal student loans, people's payments are deferred from March through September, and there are zero interest payments as well. So the federal government has really been very, very helpful to people. But as Sean points out, nobody has yet stepped up to say, oh, let's cancel them.
Right.
Or give them, I think people deferring things is going to mean that things, they'll have to start paying again. But
yeah,
this was a great deal of help, I think.
Okay. So looking again at safety nets and critical services in populations that are traditionally underserved, I want to ask a question that's come in about housing, homelessness, and low-income housing, and how not only that it's being adversely impacted, but what types of programs or supports are you looking at the state level to ensure that people again aren't falling through the cracks in the area of housing supports and homelessness?
Terry, I've been a supporter and a co-sponsor of the RAF program, which is the rental assistance program. And one of the major problems in my district, particularly in Malden, is we have youth homelessness. So we have students, there's 15% of the students in Malden are either homeless or are couch surfing. And this is a major problem that the city of Malden is facing in their educational system. But we've got to do more. We've got to do more to get housing and affordable housing into all of our communities throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I sometimes cringe at when we say, "Oh, wait a minute, we're gonna build an affordable unit." When we tell a developer, please, you're going to build 100 units, please give the community 15 or 20 that are affordable. Well, when you look at it and you see what's happened in Wellington, particularly, that the average rent is $3,200 a month for a 2-bedroom, then what is affordable rent when we force that developer to do that? It ends up being $2,400 a month. Well, who can afford the $2,400 a month? And what we should be saying instead of affordable is low-income housing to help those who are making less than $50,000 a year or $40,000 a year. And that's the kind of housing that we need. And we've got to continue to look at what we're doing with regard to our housing facilities throughout the Commonwealth to make sure that we're accommodating those who really need housing.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean, did you want to weigh on this? And then I'll go up to Christine.
Yeah, I would just say, I know Representative Barber served at one time on the Committee on Housing. I believe she still is. But I would echo everything that Leader Donato said. One of the areas that I have worked on is MRVP, Massachusetts Rental Voucher Program, which is really critical for families. It used to be the policy of the Commonwealth, unfortunately, to open up hotel rooms for families. And we know, just based on our shared experiences, that hotel rooms are not stabilized housing for families. So I'd say over the last 3 or 4 years, we've really engaged in a lot of work of trying to get families out of hotels, motels, and into permanent stabilized housing. We know that families who are struggling, whether it be employment or whatnot, that family can't be helped realistically until you build a strong foundation. And a home is a strong foundation, certainly not a hotel or a motel that is temporary. So I will certainly continue to advocate for MRVP. And these are the problems, right? When you're talking about a pandemic that is causing anywhere from $6 to $8 billion cut in the budget, you know, we don't want to cut local aid. We don't want to cut higher education. We don't want to cut education.
Yeah.
We don't want to cut mental health. Well, then you have to figure, where are you going to cut?
Yeah.
Well, what's left? Housing. And we don't want to cut housing because that would have a traumatic negative impact on families who have been victimized by this pandemic and families who were victimized long before this pandemic. The governor has a zoning bill, which I do support. I'm hoping that we can improve upon it in terms of affordability components of the zoning bill. But it's such an important question.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that response. Christine, Sean mentioned that you are on the housing committee. So how do you want to deal with this?
Yeah, thanks, Terry. So I'm a member of the housing committee, which I've served on for a few sessions now. And we all know there's been a housing crisis before the pandemic, and the pandemic really laid bare the lack of safety net and a lack of affordable housing that a lot of us have known for a long time in this area. So something that one of the things that I'm proud of that we did right away after the pandemic began was we passed a law in the State House to stop evictions. So right now we have the strongest law in the country, actually. You can't be evicted during the state of emergency from your home. We also passed some protections for homeowners. So you can do a forbearance and get help with your mortgage and put that at the end of your mortgage, because we know homeowners are hurting also. So we have a really strong emergency law, which is important, and I'm glad that we, led on that. And that's not enough. So we're looking at tenant protections, and we're trying to figure out, okay, what tools are there to make sure that when this crisis is over, people are not kicked out of their homes? How do we help with rent? How do we provide some more affordable housing to make sure that people have a place to live and to stay safely? And that I appreciate all that Leader Donato is doing on RAFT and MRVP. There was a lot of subsidy programs that we're gonna have to work on. The city has put forth some money, and I know Housing Families, which serves Medford, has some rental assistance programs for people who are in need. So it's going to take all of us to really think about this, but there's lots more to do, and we're working on it in the Housing Committee.
Thank you so much. Senator Jalen, did you want to have a word on this?
Well, I support what my colleagues have said, and I'm glad Medford is working on the housing issue. And I just want to also give a shout out to the assistance for small businesses that Medford is taking a lead on. I was listening to the chamber on Thursday, that there's a lot of interest in that because small businesses are really struggling. But I think you cannot separate the housing question from the question of income. That if people are not that the reason people need help with housing is because their income is too low. So you can pay one way or you can pay another, but if you want to stop homelessness, you should make sure that people can earn a living when they're working.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I have, just a few minutes left in our conversation, which I've really enjoyed. I've learned an awful lot from all three panels, from the school committee to the city council, now here with the with you state legislators. But I want to make sure that the last word is yours and not mine. So what I'm going to do is I'll just go around the horn and maybe take 35 seconds and just, kind of sum up how you're feeling about things and where you want to see things go from here. So Christine, why don't I start with you?
Thanks, Terry. I actually think we should end with you. If you did a poem or something, it might be a nice, way to end up all this talking with politicians for the last couple hours. I want to thank you. I want to thank the West Medford Community Center for having us today and getting this out to so many people. we know there's so much need right now and so many people are hurting. And I'm proud to be part of the Medford delegation and the city where the mayor and the council and school committee, everyone's really stepped up and done an amazing job. But really the people of Medford have been incredible in looking out for each other, doing, you know, phone trees with their neighbors, checking on seniors and other families. And it's really incredible to be a part of that. So thank you to everyone for doing your part, staying safe, social distancing. Call us if you have needs or if you have ideas. We are on email, we are working remotely, and we need to keep talking to each other and looking out for each other. So thank you.
Excellent. We'll do what we can to keep people apprised of how to get in touch with folks and so on and so forth. So we'll try and be an instrument to keep that happening too. Senator Donato.
Oh, wait a minute. Senator Jaylen won't.
Donato, excuse me.
That's all right, Terry. Well, let me say that first of all, let me thank you and the West Medford Community Center for the work that you have done and they do every day, the people in the West Medford Community Center and throughout the entire city of Medford. You know, sometimes when there are crises, people step up to the plate and things happen that you say, oh my God, the community has come together. And they have, whether it be at the food banks, whether it be housing, whether it be just taking care of the elderly. We made calls to all of anybody who was over the age of 65 to see whether or not they needed food or medicine. And if they did, the mayor was fantastic. She had volunteers to those homes and accommodating those people. I'm somewhat optimistic because I have worked diligently with the delegation, and Medford should be proud of the members of the House and Senate that they have elected here in Medford, because they are committed people who are going to make it and make this pandemic is not going to go away, but we're going to step up to the plate and start to work diligently to make it so that everyone is treated fair. And that's the important thing, that you have dedicated legislators who are going to work toward making fair for all of the problems that we're going to be facing with in the near future.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sean, give me 30 seconds.
Terry, I just want to say thank you so much. I want to thank the West Medford community. As you know, my father recently lost his life to coronavirus, and I really just want to thank the Medford community for all the folks who have reached out to me and my family. It means a lot. We are vulnerable, right? This is a pandemic that is showing the ugly underbelly of all income inequality across our Commonwealth, and we need to rise above it, and we need to strengthen our safety nets. And there's a whole lot of work that needs to get done during this pandemic, and as we talked about on the call, after the pandemic as well, in terms of important pieces of legislation that'll strengthen those safety nets. But thank you to the Medford City Council, School Committee, the Mayor, and the Community Center for putting this on.
Thank you very much. I appreciate having you, Senator Jaylen.
Well, what's left to say? I agree with everything everybody's saying. Thank you to everybody that is making it possible for us to communicate this way. Yes. I know a lot of work went into making this happen, and makes it a lot of work goes into all of the work you do every week to keep people in touch. So I appreciate that people don't call us. Christine said call us, no, email us. That will be more effective. And I appreciate people staying in touch, and I agree with the idea that this is exposed problems that we can work on together.
Yes. And
that the fact that we are mutually dependent, we are not isolated souls. We are together, and we need to help each other.
Thank you.
After this is over.
Appreciate you. So my friends, it seems that that's all the time we have for today, but the discussion absolutely will be ongoing as we all work together for the people of Medford and the people in your greater legislative districts. And Senator Pat Jaylen, Rep. Sean Gabali, Rep. Donato, Rep. Christine Barber, thanks so much for being available to us this morning. And we also wish you every conceivable success in safely and effectively guiding the ship of state through the rough and unpredictable waters that we're in right now. We will continue to engage with you and endeavor to keep these conversations moving forward for this beloved and historical city. Thank you, everybody who has joined in and watching us. We hope that we've given you some good information and presented with you with diverse perspective. Until we meet again.
And from afar, from your erstwhile administrator, a virtual round of applause for Terry Carter, who's done a yeoman's job of facilitating for the last 3 hours. So give it up for Terry.
Thank you, Bill, for conducting business. Thank you, Patrick Gordon, for MCM. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you around the way.
Thank you all.
Thank you.